Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Grab Matters podcast. Today we welcome on a very special guest, Travis Moye. Travis Moye is the owner of the boarding school. He initially got his start water skiing up in Georgia, and then eventually moved down to Alabama where he skied in college and then skied professionally for a little bit, and then moved down to Florida and started a bunch of coaching. We talk with him about the early days of coaching, at Ride the Spot with Darren Shapiro, how that kind of transitioned into the boarding school with Sean Murray. We talk about driving on the Pro Wakeboard Tour and a bunch of other pro events. We also talk coaching and his takes on water ski coaching, wakeboard coaching, wake surf coaching, kind of what he's seen over the years in his career that has worked, what doesn't work, some tips you can have for you guys. If you guys are interested in supporting the podcast, joining the Patreon is the best way to do that. It allows you guys to see who the guests are early, ask them some questions. We also do some giveaways over there, which is really awesome. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoy.
I approve waterboarding.
They're talking about wakeboarding. The thing about wakeboarding, every trick is an invert.
Backside.
One-side air railing.
A new dimension.
So we're back. Another episode of the Grab Matters podcast. Today we welcome on a very special guest, Travis Moye. Is that how I say it?
Yep.
Moye?
Yep.
All
Yep.
right. Love it. So start off with a few questions.
Yep.
Wake pants, yes or no?
I'm a pretty strong yes, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Here's my deal. I'm a firm believer in doing whatever you want to do, right? Wear what you want to wear. You think they're cool, you want to rock them. I don't care. You're behind the boat. You're on the cable. I mean, definitely the cable and winch stuff, it seems to make a little more sense. Yeah. You know, there's like a vibe going, whatever. But yeah, you're a wake pants guy. Strap them on.
It's almost about time, I think, to hang this first question up. It's like almost everyone's saying yeah. And I don't know if that's to kind of pander to the wake pants audience. Doesn't seem like you are trying to, but maybe some others are. But
I mean, I don't have any skin in the game in the wake pants.
True.
You know, so that's organic.
Straight from the heart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite grab?
I know Benny G hated on it. Tail grab.
I love the tail grab.
You know, and if you do the tail grab though, you got to freaking karate chop that thing.
Yeah.
Like, suck it up.
Or you got to yank it up to your ear or just poke it straight out.
Something.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. Third question. Are you the best towboat driver in the world?
Yes. Yes, I am.
And that's a wrap here. So, yeah, I mean, you're the best towboat driver in the world. You've logged probably the most hours, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would have logged the hours. I know there's some guys that drive the boat very well. I mean, I do think if you were going to put me in a boat 2 hours, 4 hours, 10 hours, I don't care what it is, you're going to get the same thing for all of those hours. And, you know, the thing, people always ask me all the time, like, how do you become a good boat driver? And my standard answer for that is just care what's happening behind the boat. Drive the boat like you would want to be driven all the time. That's getting out of the water, that's down the lake, that's turning the boat around, that's whatever it is. You drive the boat like you would want to be driven. And if you do that, you're going to be incredible. You're going to be somebody that, you know, they are looking for to be sitting in the boat all the time. And that's how I got to where I am, honestly.
Biggest piece of advice right there.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that. So I do want to get into a lot more, you know, towboat driving and all that stuff, but let's jump back to the early days. Early days, young Trav.
Yeah.
So where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I'm from Calhoun, Georgia. So it's very North Georgia, like very close to Tennessee, like 45 minutes from Tennessee. I originally learned to water ski on Lake Allatoona, which they've had a bunch of pro tours and worlds and nationals and stuff there now. I learned to ski on that lake. And then when I was, I don't know, 5th grade, 6th grade, we moved to Calhoun. And then I grew up skiing there on Carter's Lake. And it's super cool. It's just like this mountain lake. It's like 300 feet deep. They have an upper and lower lake so they can pump water both ways and generate power both ways. So the lower lake, you would just like drive right over it. And, you know, I would go and start my day and it would be completely dry. You drive up the mountain 20 minutes or whatever, and we'd go out for, you know, 3 or 4 hours and you come back down and that lake would be full, or vice versa.
Wild.
You know, so it's pretty cool. But it was cool because there's no houses on it. There's only one marina on it. It's not really, I don't know if it's used now, but it just wasn't like really used. So, you know, especially in the winter, I mean, we would be the only boat on the lake, and it's a big lake, you know, or maybe there's a fisherman or two or something like that. But I mean, it was like me and my mom, and we would just, you know, put the boat in, be the only people there, do our deal, and, you know, cruise out. yeah. And then I don't know how far she go, but like went from there, graduated high school, went to University of Alabama. And then when I graduated from Alabama, moved to Florida in 95, and I've been here ever since.
Okay, so I'm curious. You said how far should I go? I'm curious on the collegiate part because you skied in college, right?
Yep.
On a ski team. So
Yep.
kind of run through that, what that looked like.
So I mean, I went to Alabama because of the ski team there. They were one of the best ski teams in the country, and mainly because they had this one guy who was the faculty advisor until, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even. He just passed away a couple years ago, or last year, I think. This dude, Tom Strong, and he was just, man. Honestly, I could cry talking about this dude. He just took such good care of us. He was the sole reason I went there. And Thomas Herman is calling me. He knows I'm on here. He literally knows.
Pick up. Answer. Do you have your phone on you? What a bad time to call too. Put him on speaker right now.
What do you want? I'm doing this thing right now. I'm literally doing the thing. There's a camera, there's microphones, there's the whole thing.
Bruh, is it your birthday?
No, Thomas, it's the 9th.
Oh, okay. I didn't. Dude, Bo called me and he was like freaking out. He's like, yo, it's Trav's birthday. And I was like, what? I was like, I thought it was the 5th. It's the 9th.
Cats are way off.
Oh my God, Thomas. I gotta go, man. I'm in the middle of freaking podcast, bro.
Your Snapchat says it's your birthday.
I'm gonna bury you. Bye.
I can literally get your wife to never talk to you.
Oh my God.
I hate you.
Little interruption from
I hate you so much.
the man himself, Thomas Herman, legend.
So yeah, this dude, Tom Strong, he would get all this funding from the community to help us out. Like I got a scholarship to go to Alabama to ski. We had a lake that the county donated that we were the only ones allowed to ski on it. It was like a big lake, Lake Harris. So it had a boathouse. We had 3 slalom courses on it. We had a jump. We were the only people allowed to ski there. And then we would get a new mat. They had a deal with Mastercraft at the time with the dealer. And they had started it forever ago, right? When boats were 10 grand and they got the money, and we had run it for a year, and it was our, we had to sell it and all that stuff, but we would have a brand new, Pro Star every single year. And, we got to register for classes early before open registration. So my entire college career, I got my exact schedule. I never had to come up with a second option, not once.
It's the athlete treatment right there.
It was incredible, and just like that dude, I would go out a lot of times on Wednesday nights, and I would ski. He had 2 boys, and I would go and he was on Lake Tuscaloosa, and I would go ski with him. His wife would cook me dinner. He changed the brakes on my truck. I mean, he really, really took care of me.
Yeah.
I do this thing, man. If people know me, I'm a crier. I'll cry talking about people and stuff. So I do this thing kind of the end of the year, start of the year, every year. And one year, my New Year's resolution, I don't really have resolutions, but at the start of every month, I was going to call someone who was important in my life. And he was my first call, January 1.
Wow. Big mentor.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good New Year. I mean, I don't do resolutions either, but that's a good,
Yeah, it's a good thing.
good thing to do.
Yeah. And I do it did a couple at the end of the year this year. And it could be somebody I see every day. It could be Thomas. It could be somebody I see every day.
Yeah.
And then it might be somebody, I like Chet Rayleigh. I called Chet Rayleigh, either it was December 27th. I think it's my father-in-law's birthday, but called Chet at the end of the year just to tell him thank you and what all it meant, and that whole thing. So it's there's a saying, good friends say talk nice behind your back, right? And so I just think a lot of times that we can, I'll sit there and you'll say all these nice things about your friend, you never say them to your friend.
Yeah.
So it's gotta say them to your friend, man.
Yeah, at least a little bit. I mean, that's wow. That's such a great thing because you could do that so easily. Just at the beginning of the year, list of 12 people.
Yeah,
or more. I mean, if you
Yeah,
can't want to, but that's a great thing. And he was the first call, so obviously had a very big impact on
huge.
your life outside of water skiing.
Yeah, I mean, where you go to college, those are obviously very formative years, and kind of decide, your outlook on a lot of things and whatever. And he just totally set me up for success there, with school and with skiing.
Yeah. So let's kind of transition because you were there, and it sounds like he set you up really well. What kind of happens at the end of college and immediately after you mentioned moved to Florida, but what's that look like?
So I'm the first one in like 4 generations of my family not to be a doctor, with the exception of my brother, who's a lawyer. So I actually started school pre-med, and about halfway through, I just didn't want to do it. It's not what I wanted to do. Honestly, I wanted to ski, and I knew I had to go to school. I wanted to go to school, but my parents, I grew up in a family, like there was no way you weren't allowed not to graduate college, and I did very well in school. I mean, so I was a psychology major, minored in sociology, did my time, got done. And then, when I graduated, I just, my parents were like, well, now what? And I'm like, well, I just want to ski, so from there I moved to Florida. I actually moved in with Chet Rayleigh and his wife, and I worked for Chet for, I don't know, 4 years, maybe 3 or 4 years, or maybe even a touch longer. I don't know. I worked for Chet for 3 or 4 years, like right after college, and trained with him. And yeah, it was great, man. I mean, that dude, he took me in like I was his own kid. And even earlier on, I mean, I'm sure we're going to get there, but I started skiing in West Palm with Ferraro and Chet and Teggy Bennett and all these guys when I was like 13. And then but not full time, but then from 16 on, that's like the only place I would go ski with anybody. And then somewhere like that summer of when I was 16, I couldn't afford to be there anymore. I was paying for sets still. Like I wasn't working like fully where all my sets were free. I was a 3-eventer, so I'm skiing 5 times a day.
Yeah.
So I couldn't afford to pay for all my sets and pay to live. And Chet just fully said, just move in with me.
Wow. Okay, so this is after college. You move in.
No. So that's actually at 16.
16, you move in with him, and then you move back.
Yeah.
After
so
Florida.
I mean, from 16 till I graduated college, like in the summers I would live with him, or if I would go down even, because I mean, if I had 3 days, man, from Alabama was like a 13-hour drive or something to West Palm. From where I grew up, it was 10.
Yeah.
But I mean, if I had 3 days, like there was a President's Day or whatever, as soon as school got out, my car was packed and I drove to West Palm. I mean, I drove to West Palm solo at 16, like 2 weeks into having a license.
Wow.
That's no cell phone, no nothing, man. Your parents just going.
You got the map out.
Yeah.
Well, let's go down south. We're going.
Yeah,
We're good.
you don't have to have a map.
It's pretty straight shot.
It's literally 75 to the turnpike. I get on 75, I go to the turnpike, I got off. I mean, it was the straightest line drive. You get pretty full.
Easy peasy, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were there in your high school years, go to college, and then you come back. So you're skiing professionally, right? After college?
Yep.
So run through what that was like for you, just in that day and age, kind of going to events and stuff.
Yeah, honestly, tough, man. I mean, I was a 3-eventer, and in retrospect, like if I had to do it again, I would have probably stopped tricking and jumping a long time before. But I just grew up, like I grew up in the 80s, man, and it was like Sammy Duvall. Sammy Duvall was the greatest skier of all time, and he was this amazing 3-eventer, and Carl Roberge, and there were all these guys that just could do everything. And it used to be like a huge emphasis on that with water skiing. Like you had to be a 3-eventer. And then somewhere like late 80s, early 90s or whatever, I felt like people started splitting off and they were like, just be specialists. There was always a couple trick specialists, but people started just being slalom specialist or jump specialist or whatever. And I just stuck with 3-event literally to the end. And, partly because I loved it, and then partly just because like that's what I had always done. And it just seemed like you put in too much time to stop.
Yeah. You've dumped so much money into a project, you have to see it through to the end.
You're like,
yeah,
this is what we're doing, And so, I was maybe like I would go to the U.S. Open and they would pay out the top 3 overall or something, and I would make $800 or, whatever it is. But it was like, it was very tough, I was sponsored by, so I skied for HO, but that was when it was Paul's at that time was like my age, but Herb, so I skied for HO and I skied for Overton's, like the catalog.
Yeah.
Right.
Overton's Marine, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I grew up skiing a lot with his daughter, Christy Overton, and was on the U.S. team with her a handful of times and stuff like that. And then Parker was always, him and his wife were just very involved, like going to all the tournaments and stuff. So from the time I was a little kid, like we traveled with them, you know, to events and stuff like that, and would be around. And Parker always like really supported me. And that was, you know, super cool. Cause like, you know, you want to talk about a self-made man in our industry, like that dude, like literally started selling his skis out of a trunk or a grocery store or something or whatever it was. And then did that, you know, and then also produced, you know, one of the best women skiers of all time, had this beautiful lake in North Carolina, like supported a ton of skiers. It was just, you know, great. I mean, great man.
So you mentioned you were sponsored by a couple sponsors. There's Overton and HO, and you're doing okay at some contests where you're maybe getting a little bit of money.
Yeah.
Are you getting paid by those sponsors, or is that just gear you're getting?
No, gear. I mean, I would occasionally something here and there. HO was one of those things, man. It just, I was like always just something was going to happen. It just never.
Next man up, but never was
just
that.
never happened.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so I was making, at the time, I mean, I was making most of my money coaching, you know, so I would work for Chet, and like during the week, I didn't make a penny because I was living in his house and I was skiing. I had to go somewhere else to jump, but I would slalom twice, I would trick twice, and he would coach me. And so you think about that, that's basically 2 hours of his money-making day. And this is like, I mean, that dude was booked, I mean, from 7 a.m. till 6 p.m. I mean, that dude was crushing, you know, so he would spend 2 hours of his day coaching me. And then it got to be I was like, man, I need to make some money.
Yeah.
You know, and so like on the weekends, he would only work generally like, if he worked Saturday, it'd be a half day, and then he didn't want to work Sunday at all. And so he'd be like, hey, you can work Saturdays and Sundays if you want to, and whatever you make, you know, and I would pay for the gas and whatever. And he had a, you know, Mastercraft at the time, he had a Pro Star. And so I could, you know, go out and make some money. And I would do pretty decent because we had a ton of regulars and whatever. And then I was in the boat a lot. So I had people that liked me being in the boat and wanted to be in the boat. And then also I feel like it was a different type of pressure. Like, cause I even think about this at my place a lot. Like, I think people respond differently, whether it's me in the boat or whether it's me and Thomas in the boat, or if it's just Thomas in the boat or whoever's working with me. Right. Cause there's just a different energy. Somebody is maybe intimidated or whatever it is. And you can everybody can get a little something different out of somebody. Yeah. Right. So I think there were people that were drawn to like my energy or whatever I was doing. And so I'd actually do pretty well, you know, like on those weekends, and, you know, definitely made it worth doing it, made it where I was, you know, I had a great lifestyle. You know, I wasn't making a lot of money, but I like
skiing a lot.
I was skiing a lot. I was surfing. We lived 15 minutes from the beach. I was surfing all the time. I had, you know, a handful of really good friends, and I traveled, and, you know, it was very simple, but great, dude.
So how's that progress? It sounds like you're doing that for a few years.
Yep.
Skiing, going to events, having a lot of fun. It's not like having a blast, honestly. How's that progress into whatever comes next? What does come next after that, and why, I guess?
So I just with skiing, I got very, very burned out. Felt like I got screwed over a couple times. I mean, I went to a U.S. team trials one year, and I'm sure somebody's going to hear this and whatever, and somebody can justify it and whatever. But I went to U.S. team trials one year. I got second in slalom. It's 3 rounds. Got second in slalom behind Chris Parrish, who was the current world record holder. I got like third in tricks, and jumping was my worst event, but I jumped really well, and I won all 3 rounds of overall. So the U.S. team is 6 people, and it's all based on your scores, and they're plugging into computer things and whatever. But like, they had 6 people. They had 2 alternates, I think, that traveled, and then they named like, it ended up being like 16 people or something that were like getting some kind of like little funding for the first time, and like something was happening. And my name was not in those 16 people. And I literally left there and I quit skiing.
Wow. Why do you think it wasn't in that list?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I have a couple of theories, honestly. like, so I was in West Palm.
Yep.
And I was, for a long time, and skiing with like Ferraro and Chet and Tangy Bennett, and exclusively. Like a lot of people would come down there and take sets with them, but I mean, those were my guys. That's the only people I wanted to be with. And they were not part of, like, at the time, Chet didn't ski any tournaments. Ferraro had been banned from AWSA. Tangy was just like this freaking little outlaw. And we just, they weren't part of the system. Like everybody in Orlando and all these other things or whatever. And, like I remember one time, I was just telling somebody the story the other day that I kind of, in retrospect, probably not the smartest thing, but I made like a U.S. team, and it was at Jack Travers, who's one of the most well-known coaches in the world. And so for like the week after, they wanted everybody to stay there that made the team and train. And it was like team bonding and like whatever. Well, what we were doing was very different than, especially with like slalom. Jumping, different thing. I'd, kind of jumped on my own down south, honestly. But what we were doing in slalom at the time was very different than what other people were doing. And
how so? What do you mean by
just
that?
technique wise? Because like, back in the day, it was just like this super old school, everybody's straight up and down and hard leans and, like it just looked different. It was a different vibe, whatever. And we were just starting to figure things out, and it was just different. And so like I made that team and I didn't want to stay. And I told him I didn't want to stay. I'm like, I honestly felt like I was wasting a week of my life, and it was in the summer, whatever. And, no disrespect to what they were doing. It just wasn't what we were doing. So why am I going to sit there for a week and have somebody coaching me and I'm just like smiling and nodding and going, okay, well, yeah, that's not right. And that's not where we're, not saying that's not right, but that's not what I feel
like I would regress almost if I stayed.
That's not what I'm working on. Or I literally would just have smiled and nod and just kept doing my same stuff. And they're like, man, this kid sucks. He can't even do, like,
he doesn't listen well at all.
Yeah. Period. It seems like he's purposely trying to do the opposite, and, that didn't go over well, I don't think. I don't know, honestly. And maybe, maybe something, I don't know. But, honestly, it was, kind of a blessing. Like I was pretty maxed out. I think if I, like I said, if I had just stuck to slalom and only slalom, I was very consistent, like at slalom. So no matter what, I don't care if it was windy, perfect, crappy boat, whatever, I would run 38 off. I had a whole entire year. I didn't miss 38 off one round of any tournament. And that's when like winning would be like 4 at 39. It's not like now. Now is insane. Insane. So I feel like if I'd have just stuck to that, I probably could have slalomed and
that would have been your choice,
and done well, or done okay, made more money than I was making anyway. But I didn't want to do it anymore. And a lot from the standpoint, like, none of those people at those tournaments, and I'm not saying I didn't like people or I didn't have a couple friends there or whatever, but they weren't my people. And like, none of the people I trained with would travel to tournaments. So every
kind
tournament,
of a solo thing.
I was 100% solo, dude. When I say 100% solo, like I would have to find somebody to pull my trick release for me because I didn't have my guy.
Yeah.
And then like with that, this is cool. Like, McCormick's Cable Park. So Jim McCormick, he's just like, I don't know if you've seen him, like red jumpsuit, cowboy hat, seen the pictures or whatever. His sons are all around my age. We all competed against each other. And they all did 3 event, and they're very competitive. They were all incredible. And I was directly competing against his sons, but I would ask Jim to pull my release every weekend and he would do it. And because I knew he would never screw me. Like even if I was going to beat his son, I knew he would never screw me. And I knew if there was a problem, like with the boat or whatever, that he would have fought for me.
Yeah.
And then too, it's like when you look up in the boat, like I'm real big on the vibe of the boat. It makes a huge difference, right? Like,
oh yeah,
the vibe of the boat,
vibes like, of anywhere you go.
Yeah.
Huge difference
of how you feel, like comfort level or excitement level or whatever. And when you look up in the boat and that dude's sitting there in that red jumpsuit and that hat, I'm like, he's got me.
Yeah.
We're good. So I forget where I went on this, going on this tangent a little bit.
Well, before we move on, we got a lot of wakeboarders listening to this. So what's a trick release? Trick release? Because they probably don't know what it is.
Okay, so you know, you have a hand pass, which would be, you know, similar to wakeboarding, but obviously things are smaller. I mean, the wake's this big, but you're doing flips, you're doing spins. But you also have a toe pass where your foot actually goes in a rope and it's really locked in there. I mean, there's a harness that goes behind your heel.
I'll put some videos in.
You are not coming out of that thing, period. So if you catch an edge or whatever, you would be split in two, man, like a freaking wishbone. So you just have a guy in the boat that can, now that everybody uses a rope release where literally it's just a piece of rope wrapped around that has the end and you just let go, because the trick releases would have issues when they got super under tension. You couldn't pop, you know, like it would be bound.
Yeah.
You know, so everybody just uses these, that rope releases I don't even think were a thing when I was a kid, but yeah, so Jim would just sit there and pull the release when I was doing toe tricks and made sure I didn't die.
Yeah, you want an important guy there in that position for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess we can kind of move to, you quit water skiing. It was basically like a snap decision.
Yep. So
what comes next? Where do you go with your life after that?
So at the time I was coaching, or, you know, I was coaching. So we had these lakes in West Palm Beach that were just little sand pits, and they started out with Ferraro like in the 80s, and they passed through a handful of people. And then the last two people that were there, Darren Shapiro had the front lake and it was wakeboarding, and Chet had the back lake and it was water skiing. So I was mainly working with Chet, but like, you know, downtime or whatever, I would like pop over and hop in the boat with those boys and hang out and, you know, like occasionally wakeboard with them or just be hanging out, or we would start, you know, we were surfing on surfboards, you know, behind the boat. And then it just got to be, I was like kind of going back and forth to both boats a bit. And then those lakes got sold, and, you know, there's just nowhere to go down there. There's not a ton of water in South Florida, like fresh water, you know? And so it's kind of every man for himself. And, you know, Chet just was like, hey, look, I don't know what I'm going to do. I, you know, can't afford to do anything with you. I have no idea what's going on. And, you know, Darren was amazing. He was leaving for a trip to go somewhere for like a month, you know, they were filming or they were doing whatever. He was literally leaving for like a month, and he gave me the key to his house. And he said, when I come back, I expect you to be living in my house. And I moved in his house.
Great guy. Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, yeah, you're living in his house. What are you up to?
So then I just started only coaching wakeboarding and working with Darren. And what, you know, wasn't skiing at all, was coaching, zero skiing. I didn't ski or coach skiing for 15 years. Only wakeboarding. From like 1997 till...
Hard transition.
Yeah, from 1997 till 2012, I did not. I was cold turkey on both. Didn't do either one of them.
Wow.
Yeah. And so... you know, was working with him, and I don't know, it seems like the statute of limitations is up, but we were just running out of Okehele, like illegal, you know, because there's nowhere to go. We ran on Lake Osborne for a little bit, and it's just so gross. It's like shallow and mucky and gross and whatever. And we're like, this ain't it, you know? And then we were just on that back lake, at Okehele Park, which is the jump lake. And, you know, I understand that people not want to do some commercial out there, but literally that jump lake does not get used at all. There'd be like 2 jumpers a week, you know, like whatever. Yeah. And we would just be posted up on that back lake and had an X-Star sitting on the dock, and had, you know, 95% of what we did was local kids, because, you know, once again, there's nowhere for local kids to ride. So, I mean, that was cool, because you would have just like a pretty solid built-in base of students, just because, you know, in the summer, they would be there all day, or every day after school, there's 8 kids that are going to come and at least do one ride, or, you know, whatever it is. And did that for, I don't know, really not that long. And then ended up moving up to Orlando in 99, I think.
Okay. When does Ride the Spot come into
99.
Right then. Okay. So I think that's a good time to kind of transition into what that is, or what that was.
Yeah.
And how you got involved.
So Darren bought a house out on Lake Mary Jane. And I remember we were following the realtor out there, man. And this lady, cause I mean, Narcoossee Road at the time, and the whole way back to where, I mean, I still live back there, it was nothing but cow fields. I mean, it like borderline dirt road, man. And this lady just keeps going and going and going. And we're like, where the hell? We're like, there's no way we're going back here, you know? And especially when you're coming from South Florida where everything's just this grid system and everything's just, tick, 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 you know? And you're like, where is she going? And we get back there and there was a house and a guest house and it's on that lake. And there's just, you know, it's middle of the day, a beautiful sunny day, and there's not a boat on the lake and whatever. And we're like, yep, no, this looks pretty good, you know? And the whole reason we ended up here, honestly, is Sean had just bought his house, same house he's in now.
Sean Murray.
Yeah. So Sean had bought his house like a while before, and we had come up here and seen it and just seen the area. And we're like, oh, this is pretty cool. You know, like there's just big lakes. Cause I mean, coming from South Florida, and I say big lake, I know people from anywhere else, but Orlando, if I say big lakes, thinks that's a joke. But like, you know, once again, there's not lakes in South Florida. So when you have like these bigger open lakes and multiple lines to run and, you know, whatever, and we're like, nobody's on here. We're like, no, this is great, you know? So, yeah, we did that. And I was there until 2003, I think.
So four-ish years.
Yep.
So who are you running Ride the Spot with?
With Darren.
Darren.
I mean, yeah. So, I mean, to be honest, I would say I did most of it.
Okay.
Very high percentage, real high percentage. But we had, I mean, he built this super nice dock and he had he was sponsored by Malibu. Originally we were both sponsored by Toyota. Toyota made boats for 3 years. Most people don't know that.
Wow.
And so one of the guys that was one of the first that was starting it with him had known Ferraro for a very long time. And so, he got Ferraro involved and then Ferraro got us involved. So for a while we had 2 Toyotas there, like Darren had his and it would just always be, you know, cause it wasn't as easy to sack things out then, you know, it was like a nightmare. So his boat would always just be like pretty sacked out and slammed and ready to go. And then my boat would just be, you know, pretty much no weight in it and just using whatever ballast was in there, you know, for, you know, 90% of the people that were riding. And then Toyota was only in business for like 3 years. Greatly underestimated how loyal the inboard boat market is, I think, because they were very nice boats. I mean, they were made very well.
I'll have to find a picture, some videos, and throw that in. Because
third year in business, they sold like 130 boats. So they're like, we're out, guys, you know. And then so Darren ended up going with Malibu, and I had skied for Mastercraft or with Mastercraft schools or whatever, literally my entire life. I mean, I made more money skiing as a 12-year-old than I did as a 25-year-old. Like my mom passed away. I was going through things. Like I was on salary from Kidder Skis. I got my first free boat from Mastercraft when I was 12. I found this letter that was from the president of Mastercraft at the time or whatever. Like I'd won the junior worlds or nationals or whatever. And I got like $1,000 bonus check.
how much was that from Kidder Skis? You were on salary? You remember that?
It wasn't much. It was like
a little bit.
Yeah, it was like $500 a month or something.
For a 12-year-old?
Yeah.
That's pretty damn good.
No, it was awesome. It was awesome. You know, and they would they would run like ads with us and stuff, you know, like, you know, and have posters. Like it's funny. I don't know if he still I'm sure he does. I think Murray's got one in his garage because when I went to my mom's house, my mom had these ones and I'm like 12 doing a donkey kick, dude, you know, like on this thing. And I signed something very smart ass to it. Like Murray, keep working and one day you can get there or whatever, you know. He's got poster 12-year-old Travis trick skiing in his garage, you know.
Oh, that's good. I didn't know you made more money as a 12-year-old than a 25-year-old.
Yeah, no, it's now that I'm mentioning it's very depressing. Might have led to
you can look at it that way, or you're a kick-ass 12-year-old. There you go.
Half full guy. I like
full.
it.
So your Ride the Spot is kind of 3-4 years there from 99 to early 2000s. What's the kind of catalyst for that coming to an end? Because it sounds like a pretty decent setup. You're doing a lot of the work, though.
Yeah. You know, it's tough having a business with a friend. You know, I lived there. I ended up right before it ended, actually, I bought my first house, but I was 0.2 of a mile away. But we were just kind of going different directions. And just things personally between us got very tense. And I just got to where I would just come. And I mean, especially after I moved out, like I would ride my bike down there. I would just jump in the boat, pull my sets and leave, you know, and there just wasn't much like personal interaction. I mean, we got to where we weren't hanging out at all, like literally at all.
Yeah.
And, you know, finally one day, I mean, I remember he came to my house and he said, hey, you know, obviously this isn't working out anymore and you need to find somewhere to go. And he did say, he's like, I'm not kicking you out, but you need to start figuring it out.
Yeah.
Well, I'm to a fault. I'm a guy that once something's over, it's over. And I don't look back at all. So literally the next day, or maybe that day, I went and pulled my boat. I got anything that was mine there and I left. And I had zero plan. When I say zero, I had no plan whatsoever. But like, clearly it wasn't working out. He didn't want me there. I'm not going to continue to be there. And once it's, like I said, once it's over, I'm a clean break guy. Just, I'm done, buddy. And I don't look back too much, you know? So I left. For a while, like I'm trying to think of it was summer, kind of towards the end of summer, I think. And so I just did some clinics and stuff. You know, I had a bunch of students, obviously, and some people I could reach out to. I had actually some people reach out to me that would be like, hey, I can set up a clinic for you for 4 days and, you know, whatever. And so I just did that and make some money. And, you know, I had some money. Like I you know, with me, I mean, I've been doing this for a very long time. And, you know, no matter how well I'm doing, I don't act any differently because I just know, like, it can also be very bad. Like, whether it's slow season or you have an economic recession or whatever, you know, I'm not saying like I might not go out to an extra nice dinner with my wife or something or, you know, but I'm not like,
you're not buying a brand new car.
I'm not buying a truck or taking a trip or getting a watch or like, I'm just doing my same old thing, bud, you know, like, so I did that for a while. And then, you know, I'd hung out and ridden with Murray a lot, you know, just because we're 10 minutes away. I mean, still 10 minutes away. And so I called Sean and he was driving cross country. He used to do that backyard tour where he had his bus and would drive across, just kind of follow the pro tour. And at the time I was driving the tour, and I called him and I said, hey, you know, would you ever have any interest in doing a school? And he immediately said yes. So we didn't have a plan. We didn't have a place. We didn't have a name. We didn't have anything. We just knew that we were going to do something. So we just started trying to figure stuff out and found this little house down in St. Cloud on the alligator chain and little bitty, like 1,100 square feet. But once again, you go out there, there's no one out there. You know, that was 2003. I mean, there was no one, man. And so we completely redid that house in like September, October. It was right before the Worlds. So we bought it, or he bought it actually, but, you know, we got it like a month before our first students were booked because we put something up. I had my buddy Ronnie Romero. Ronnie was originally a student of mine. And Ronnie did my website for even Ride the Spot, whatever. He was my tech support,
okay.
You know. And so I remember Sean and I were at the Gravity Games. There used to be, it was NBC's version of the X Games. We were at the Gravity Games. We called Ronnie. We go, hey, we're going to do a camp together. We need a website. We need it tonight. We're going to put something on Wake World. And we didn't have a name yet. I forget what the original website was. I mean, it might have just been murrayandmoye.com or I forget what it was, but he's like, so the very next morning we wake up and he's got like this super basic, but like 4-page website, you know, and we went and put something on Wake World and said, hey, we're starting a school. And instantly it just started filling up. So we're like, and by this time, at this point, we messed up the timeline. We didn't have a house at that point. So we came back, found that house, basically had a month to get a house ready. And Sean's like, well, worst case scenario, we'll do it at my house. We'll figure it out, whatever. We went down there. Sean and I pretty much lived there. and our wives would come down, and there's nights we would literally sleep on a sleeping bag on the floor. And whenever somebody woke up and started working, the other person started working, and we turned that house around like in that month. And it was also right leading up to the Worlds at OWC. So we had his boat parked out on the dock because it was an nautique event. And so we would work, he'd go out and ride, whatever, we'd go work. The first week of students, the first 3 days they were there was no carpet in the house. Like we had everything else done and there was no carpet in the house. I mean, we redid all the bathrooms, new cabinets, new flooring, whole place. We did the tile. Sean and I did the tile for the whole thing. And like the first 3 days there, we didn't have carpet, and then they got it. But we were crushing, we went, and I mean, I can remember one or two of that first group of students still, and it was very cool. And then like the coolest part about it is Murray won the Worlds. So it was just me and him. When I say literally just me and him, I mean, it was me and him, dude. And we would just go out in that boat, and then we'd come back and we'd be laying tile.
That's so cool.
And then at the end of it, he won the Worlds. It was amazing.
What a badass Sean Murray is a little bit. I mean,
it was amazing.
That's sick. Because you think probably a lot of other riders are probably just training. They're sponsored riders. They're getting paid a good amount of money. They're just training.
100%.
Murray's out here laying tile, carpet in between sets.
Yeah.
Guy's different. Okay. So I think before we dive into a little bit more about the boarding school and kind of the progression of it, I think we spin the LF and wheel of questions presented by Liquid Force.
The LF and wheel of questions.
Okay, let's go.
So go ahead and grab that sucker down here so we don't
scared.
knock it off. Yeah, there's one of those on there that you told me you really don't want. So
I really don't want.
We got a lot of options. So yeah, give it a nice big spin.
God.
Since you said you're not a chugger, I'll chug the glass of milk, but you got to spin again because there's some good ones on there.
Oh man, I'm not a milk guy either. I saw Benny G's. I'm not a milk guy.
If it's a beer, we're going again too. Okay, I'm glad it landed on this one because this is one I really wanted. So this is trivia. The question is, what is the base price of the 2001 X-Star? You got to be within $2,000.
I love The Price is Right. Okay,
that's what this is.
We watched The Price is Right at night last night. I love it.
It's a great show.
I made my schedule, my class schedule in college. I made around The Price is Right. My house was literally across the street from the university. I would watch the finish of the Showcase Showdown. I'd have my 11 o'clock class because we were central. Ride my ass to class super quick. But I watched The Price Right.
That's wild. I did the same thing in high school because we had open lunch, and we would go out for lunch to my buddy's house across the street from high school, watch The Price is Right while we're eating lunch, come back. It's a great show. It's such a good show. So,
man. Okay.
I'll repeat the question.
2001.
Base price of the X-Star.
Base
according
price
to boatingmag.com.
of the X-Star was $41,000.
Close. I got $44,600. So I mean, you're right on there.
Pretty good.
Pretty close.
Pretty good.
How big was it? You remember length?
21 feet. I had one.
And top speed. You remember what the top speed was?
I'm gonna say the top speed.
It was fast. I'll give you that.
I know. I'm gonna say 40.4.
44.8.
44.8.
Yeah.
Hot damn.
They get a little tailwind probably when they're measuring that one, but yeah.
That's quick though.
Yeah, that is.
I mean, that's kind of like top end of a Pro Star now, unless you have the 6.2. That's quick.
Yeah, those things were screaming back then.
Wow.
Yeah.
They were fun to drive, man. They were little.
Yeah, they were little.
They were little, dude. It was
nimble little guys.
It was fun.
I'd love one of those guys. So thanks to Liquid Force for that LF and wheel of questions.
Man.
So
I was gonna be mad. I was gonna yell at Jimmy Redmond or something if I had to chug a glass of milk.
all right. Well, there's a glass of milk in that cooler behind you.
Okay.
Slide it on over here because I gotta, somebody's got to see a chug. So I'll go ahead and
I'm not smart enough to open it.
sit on top there. There you go.
I mean, I do have 2 drinks already, so it just seems kind of wasteful.
That's a fair
seems
point.
wasteful. That's what I'm just going with.
I mean, and if you did, then you'd be having to pee here in a
Yeah.
matter of minutes. So, all right, no free ads on this milk, so just got to put the koozie on it. So while I'm slamming this, I think kind of continue on about the boarding school. So after Worlds, kind of how's it progress? How's it grow?
Yeah,
Continue.
so we were, that was kind of the heyday of wakeboarding, right? I mean, that was, there you go. Get it.
Spilled a little bit, guys.
Get it. that was kind of like the heyday of wakeboarding. So, I mean, we were busy, man. I mean, we could only take like 5 people in that house. And I mean, a good portion of the year, we would have like a waiting list. I mean, it would be booked 6-8 months out. We'd have a waiting list for spring breaks and stuff like that. And I mean, we cranked, and it was super cool out there. I mean, that chain of lakes is like 6 lakes. They're all connected. Half of every lake is basically conservancy. So there's no houses on like almost half of every lake. So we would, like, there's times it would take us 20, 30 minutes to get where we were going, but we would go to wherever the best wind was on a tree line. Like, we would never ride in front of houses, you know, but if you're willing to put in the time, you could get to a lake and you could be on this nice long tree line and be the only boat on the lake, you know, and it was great. I mean, for what it was at the time, it was such a cool, like, real, just like really good vibe, you know. I mean, it was small, man, and you were just all together all the time. And, you know, we were younger. I couldn't do it now. I'd go crazy. But, you know, it was like we were just, it was fun. Yeah, it was super fun.
So I'm curious, did you guys immediately start making money? Obviously, you're flipping the house. That's costing a lot of money.
We made, yeah.
But it was immediately booked, busy.
We were 5 people a week just running. And then also, I mean, I think about now, like, what my overhead is compared to what that overhead was is like 10% of what my overhead is now.
Really?
Maybe.
Is that low? Just,
yeah.
I mean, what was it? What was it then? I mean, what'd you have?
The house, I think, was $800 a month or something, you know, and then, you know, gas and food and insurance, whatever. When we first started, we never had anybody that worked for us. So it was just Sean and I. So we were just splitting the money, and, you know, it was just like, we were running lean, man, you know, and we were busy. So yeah, I mean, it went well pretty quickly.
Okay, I got an interesting Patreon question kind of talking about, because you're talking about campers, riders, you had a lot of people come through the door. We got a Patreon question from Joshua Boyle. So if you guys want to see who the guests are early, make sure to go ahead and join that Patreon. You can see who the guests are early, submit questions. We do some giveaways on there as well, so everybody's automatically entered in. That's a Patreon member. Joshua Boyle is wondering, have you known or had any riders at your camp that were talented enough to become pro, but simply were happy enough just wakeboarding as their hobby and didn't pursue a professional career in it?
For sure. I mean, especially back in the day, man, there were kids, there were grown men. I mean, you would occasionally get like a 35, 40-year-old dude that would come through and knock out a toe 7 or something. And you're like, who the hell is this guy? You know? And there were a ton of kids like that. I mean, because like, if you think about then, like how big it was compared to now, and you would have all these little crews of kids riding together, you know, and pushing it really hard. And then, you know, there was hope of getting on the pro tour. You know, you could look at it and go, oh, well, they're taking 40 guys and there's this, that, and other, and I can do a whirly bird and a toe 7 sometimes, and, you know, whatever. So I just think that there were a lot of guys. It seemed way more attainable for a lot of people. So you were getting guys that were riding at that level because it was something attainable. And then, but you would also just get guys that were like, I mean, because obviously you get more of that now, right? Because it's not attainable to be a pro rider.
Yeah.
People that just love the sport. I mean, like, if you look at, like, you know, like Joel, like levy weight guy.
Yeah.
I mean, Joel is a prime, like, look at that dude, man. He's like my age. He's doing tantrum to blind behind the boat, and you watch him ride on the cable, and he just absolutely destroys it, you know, and all his boys that ride with him, like, you know, they never wanted to be pro riders. They just like loved freaking board riding. Like, he's a good skateboarder. He's a good snowboarder. He's a good wakeboarder. Like, he loves riding a freaking board, you know, and he wants to get still. I mean, you look at him now, I see his videos, and I'm like, he's still improving, man. He's like getting better, and he's late 40s or 50 or whatever the hell he is, you know, or, you know, so there were quite a few guys, you know, I'm trying to think of other names, honestly, because there were definitely times that people would come through and you're like, wow, you could do this if you want. And they're like, oh, really? You know, you're like, yeah. But no, for sure.
That's kind of cool to hear. I mean, yeah, the goal doesn't have to be pro, obviously.
Yeah.
Should be having fun. And
100%.
So what's the progression of moving to the current location you're at? How long until you leave that house you guys built?
So that was
Or not built, redid.
7 years, and it wasn't by choice. So our next door neighbor at that house was the Marine sheriff for the lakes. So the first day we go look at this house, we see the sheriff truck in the driveway. We're like, oh Lord. We're like, hey, we better go talk to this guy right now. So we just went over and introduced ourselves. He was a younger guy. Like he was, I think, younger than me. And he was super cool. And he's like, oh yeah, I know, that sounds awesome. He's like, I know the guy that's head of zoning. He's like, he actually used to be a cop. I trained him and like whatever. And he's like, I could introduce you guys, get you guys set up and, whatever. And he did. So we went, met with this guy. And so the only thing we were not allowed to do at that house because of zoning was charge people to stay at the house. Because at the time, this is way pre-Airbnb and whatever. At the time, there was something like with Kissimmee St. Cloud, you weren't allowed to do anything less than a 28-day rental because they didn't want people with Disney and whatever just having all these crazy rental properties. And he goes, you can charge people to wakeboard, you can charge for the food, you can whatever, but you cannot say you're charging people to stay in that house. He goes, I don't care if you got pictures on the website of the house. He goes, how implied it is, you cannot say it. And I'm like, okay. And that was cool. I mean, because he could have just said no, and we're going to stick it to you. And, he could have just said no.
Hey, if we see people staying over, like it's,
done.
You can't be doing it.
So we ran like that for 7 years. And then finally there was like an old retired guy from New York. And then this one other guy that didn't even live on our lake, but a lake we did ride on a lot. And they just hated freaking wakeboarding, man. And just started complaining about us. And, the guy went to the city. He ended up going to like state representatives. I mean, he had it out for us hard.
It was his hobby too.
Yeah. And so it got to be a point, the last few months I was there, every day of my life, I would pull out of that boathouse and I was like, what's it going to be today? And there would be, my neighbor would have to watch us because his boss said he had to, and he would go, hey, I know you guys aren't doing anything wrong, but my boss told me I had to watch you. And he would just literally sit there and watch us all day long. Or Florida Wildlife or a county truck would pull up on the shore and they would just sit there with somebody watching me all the time. And it just got to be a nightmare. And so finally one day the zoning guy calls us and he goes, hey, there's some problems. He goes, we need you guys to come in and talk. And so we're like, we're like, hey, we'll come lunch on Friday, like whatever it was. And so we literally hopped out of the boat. I'm in board shorts, flip-flops, t-shirt, walk in with a little composition notebook, like thinking I'm just going to sit down and hash some things out, take notes with this guy. And they're like, oh yeah, they're in room 1304 or whatever. We walk in, it's a freaking panel, dude. Florida Wildlife, water management, like whatever it was. They had 8 people on this thing just waiting on us. And I just immediately started apologizing. I'm like, I'm sorry. I didn't realize this is what this meeting was. I just thought me and you were going to sit in your office and talk and sort some things out. I'm like, I'm not trying to be disrespectful or, whatever. And they're like, oh no, and they go, look, you cannot run out of that house anymore. And they're like, this was like March or April, maybe. No, it was before that. This is probably February. And they go, when's, like, how far are you booked out? And I'm like, my last booking right now is October. And I go, we're coming into spring break. I go, March and April, those are our busiest months of the year. I mean, we're booked solid. And the guy goes, well, I can't give you to October, but I think they gave us to end of July or something, which was still very gracious because they could have just said, stop immediately. Yeah. But at least they had something they could go to this guy with and say, hey,
he'll be out.
July, you got to let them finish their deal and they'll be out or whatever. And so in the meantime, we started obviously looking for places, and it's just very hard because we weren't going to go somewhere else again that we weren't allowed to do what we were doing, right? So we're like looking for something commercial. We went, I forget the name of that lake, but like Sean O'Brien had a school on this one lake, and it's like kind of downtown. It's like Lee Road. And it was actually a cool kind of setup. It had 2 houses. It had this super raggedy old school boathouse, but with like a garage door. And, it had it did have something going for it, but it was a public lake. There's a marina on it. He's like, every day after school, the rowing teams comes out and we fight with him a lot. And he's like, there's a homeless guy. You had to cross a train track to get over. And he goes, there's a homeless guy that lives in the bushes by the train track, but we never had a problem with him. And, and both our wives were with us. And I just remember like Kristen and Carrie, like looking at each other like, oh, the homeless guy, he's fine. Like it just didn't seem like the best fit.
Yeah.
We're like, we're going to end up having problems one way or another. And we kept looking and, we talked to Pat at the projects, and when Sean and I first went into business together, we tried to go out to the projects and try to work something out. So I went and met with Pat in 2003, and he was doing stuff with Byerly, and they were still just pretty invested in the boat stuff and whatever. And it just wasn't going to work out. So, we reached back out to Pat. At the time, he was, was already doing, they had 2 Cessatechs set up on Lake 3, System 2s, and he was like just definitely moving all of his focus like into cable as far as, because he was selling them and unit and like all that stuff. And he was like, well, yeah, you guys can use Lake 1 and 2, and y'all can have this part of the house. And then, we're going to keep this, and this, and we're going to stay on Lake 3, and so we did that. And, we're very, very, very thankful for it, and so it's funny. I go, well, hey, that's awesome. I go, I just want to come out there and drive the boat and make sure I'm not going to go crazy. Because especially after you're used to being on, like I was on a chain of lakes there, and you're just driving,
Yeah.
And, I've driven enough contests at OWC, like I hate OWC. I hate it. I always say if I go to hell, I'm driving a boat at OWC with no bimini top for like 12 hours. And when I get out, I get stuck by the train. Okay. That's the worst day ever for me, that place. I hate that place. I'm sorry. I'm sure it's fun for the cable and all. Drive a contest there a bunch of times. I can't tell you how many contests I've driven to that place.
Too small? Is that why or what?
Yeah, it's not fun, dude.
All right.
So I'm like, I just don't want to go crazy. And then, there all the lakes are connected. And at the time we only had 1 and 2, but there's a big cove before the house. You come through this cut through. Lake 1's like a 4 or 5 trick line. You turn the corner. Lake 2's like a 5, 6 trick line, and I was like halfway down Lake 2, and I'm like, oh yeah, we're good. And then not to mention it was just private. And so I'd gone from that place where I had somebody watching me all the time and angry at me and whatever. And then you're like, oh, I'm king of the hill, buddy. I can do whatever I can play whatever music I want. I can do. Because like, once again, like we were so respectful of that old place. We would order our boats with tower speakers because they wanted them to resell them. But like on the Mastercrafts, it was just a harness. So you could unclip because the way the tower folded.
Yeah.
So day one, I would unhook my tower speakers. I would never play music through a tower speaker because I'm like, we're on the lake 8-10 hours a day. I'm not trying to make people mad, man. I'm like just trying to do what I'm doing. So we were very, very respectful of what we're doing, and we just had those problems. And, but then we go out there and it's just our place, and it was just like the greatest feeling in the world. I mean, I just remember like literally the day one, just all that badness
Big deep exhale of all the bad stuff.
Because it was very bad. I mean, I didn't know what I was going to do. And, obviously, I mean, at that time I'm married, I had a kid, I'm real life adult stuff, and you don't know what you're going to do for a living. It's very scary, and I was like, thing I always say is like, I could have cried or punched somebody at the face in any moment. Like it was that stressful.
Yeah. On edge all the time.
Not knowing what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And then that happened, and it was just the biggest, like, all right, we're here.
So was that a pretty smooth transition then over to the current location?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, the house was pretty beat up. I mean, they like projects ran a very different scenario than us, right? So they were just had all these wakeboard kids, and Pat always had a bunch of people that worked for him, and it was just like a little, like hangout, like fraternity house, like not from a party standpoint, I don't think, but just like 12 kids playing video games and whatever. So the house was pretty beat, and we had one weekend in April that we could have made it happen, like do the transition, or else we were going to have to wait a while just from the way students were and contests were and all that. So we went down there this one weekend in April, and I still have a plaque in the house today. We had 20 plus people show up, and spend pretty much all weekend with us. And I'm talking cleaning, painting, doing like changing light fixtures, hanging mirrors, setting up the furniture. So Friday night, I drove over there with my boat full of all our gear, had a U-Haul with all the stuff. And we pulled up Friday, and because we told Pat we were doing it, and then I get there Friday night at like 8:00, and there's not one thing out of the house, and the kids are sitting on the couch playing video games, and I'm like, Pat, we have this weekend to do it, bud. Tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., I'm coming in here like a freaking TV show, and we're ripping this place a new one, you know? And he goes, all right, get up. And he literally made all those kids get up, and they just threw everything in the backyard. He goes, we'll figure it out, but it'll be out of here. And they just literally threw everything in the freaking backyard. So the next morning, I cruise over there, and there were like 20 people showed up and worked for pretty much 40 hours straight or whatever it is. And we had people coming in that Sunday night. And with the exception of pictures being hung, the house looked like it did for eternity. I mean, like we'd redone a ton of stuff now, obviously, but it was done. Perfect. Everything painted, all the furniture and everything in place, towels, bath mats, like, you know.
Acceptable for guests to stay in.
Yeah. I mean, and nice.
Yeah.
You know, and we flipped that over, and Monday morning we were ripping.
Sweet. So what year is that you're,
that was 2010, like April of 2010.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I got a couple of questions about I got a lot of questions about the boarding school, but I got a quick one that wondering if anybody's ever proposed at the boarding school.
Yes, one. Yeah. Brett Hunsinker.
Yeah. He messaged me when you were on your way. He was like, I got to ask this question.
I'll show you the picture somewhere.
He sent it to me. I got it. So I'll put that in.
So it was cool. He told me he wanted to do it. His now wife was like into water sports. She grew up like barefooting a lot, but she would wakeboard, I think, to pass time or whatever. Maybe she liked it a little bit, but she was definitely, because she barefooted at the camp even when she was there. And he told us the whole thing. And so, have you ever met Katie Consor?
No.
So Katie helps me out. Not lately, she's just on a world travel somewhere. But I have this girl, Katie, that originally came as a student, and will do stuff with us at the camp. And she's amazing, sweetest girl in the world. And so I was like, I'm going to need some help sorting this out. And so I told Katie, and of course she's just like, oh God, so we had, champagne in the boat and stuff set up and whatever. And, had our cameras, and we had a GoPro, and just had it all organic, like nothing seemed weird. And then he just got on the back of the boat. We're like driving down the lake, and he's, on one knee with a ring, proposing to his girlfriend.
And she had no idea. Love that.
Yeah. Oh, it was super cool. So we've had one proposal. Brooks and Corey Wilson had their wedding part. I don't know what you call it. It was before they got married, because they had a relatively small wedding on the beach.
Wedding shower or something?
Wedding shower.
Or whatever.
Sure.
I don't know. Little party.
But so they had a wedding party before their wedding at the camp. And I actually have like a kid that's helped me for the past 3 or 4 years on and off from Pennsylvania, actually moved here, and they got married at the courthouse like 2 or 3 months ago, but he's having his wedding at the camp in April.
Oh, sweet.
So that's going to be our first boarding school wedding. It's going to be amazing. I'm pumped on it. It's going to be amazing. Going to be amazing.
I was going to say a lot of surprises at the boarding school. Sounds like maybe some events now, because T. Herm had the triple surprise at the boarding school. So okay. Before we dive into kind of teaching and coaching, because I do want to pick your brain on quite a bit of that. Who is the best wakeboard and water ski coach in the world?
Mike Ferraro.
What makes him so good?
Without question. He doesn't really actively work. Well, I say that I know he works with Ryan Dodd. I mean, there are people that he talks to, but it's not like he's in a boat really at all. Other than at Lake Ronix when they're doing square one stuff or whatever. But he still thinks about it as much as anyone. He has a very different viewpoint on things. This is a while ago. I had this kid that was helping me, and Mike was coming out. I had a student that wanted to ride with Mike, and Mike and I will like share students because he doesn't have a place, and somebody will reach out and want to do something with him, and he'll be like, yeah, I can come down there. I'll come once a day, and you can ride the other two with Travis, and we'll talk and have everything sorted out. We're on the same page, and whatever. And so we had this guy out and he was riding, and Mike's coaching, and Mike will rarely tell you what to do, ever. He never gives you a put the handle here, do this. He asks you why you think things are happening. Well, why do you think that's happening? Well, where's the pressure when you're here? Well, how do you feel at this point of the trick? Like, he'll ask you all these questions, and then you're like, oh, well, yeah, no, there I'm doing this. Like, oh, no, I don't feel any pressure in my back arm at all there, like, or whatever. And he just kind of lets you sort it out. Like, and I mean, I'm sure he could teach beginners, but I mean, he's like with upper level rider or skier, because you have your things. I mean, like, if you look at, I'm going to use like look at Andrew Atkinson riding and look at Mossy riding. Okay. You can't coach those two guys the same, right? Andrew's perfectly tall, everything's so textbook. And then you got like Mossy, who's like crazy, hunched over one hand, like, whatever. So, but Mike could coach both of those guys as effectively and just go, hey, well, why do you think there's pressure here, or whatever it is, whatever question he's going to ask. And he lets them kind of sort it out. So I had this kid that was helping me at the time, and Mike got out and left, and he goes, that's who you think the best coach in the world is? I go, yeah. He goes, he didn't tell him anything. Didn't tell him one thing. He goes, all he did was ask him questions, didn't tell him a single thing. I go, did he do it? He's like, yeah, like whatever trick is. I was like, did he do it? And he goes, yeah. And I go, and?
Proof's in the pudding.
And then Mike's super cool. Like, Mike's my first call a lot of times. And Mike's definitely one of those people. I give that call of thank you to Mike at least once a year. I did it recently. But Mike is like one of my first calls. Like, I had something that Mary Morgan and I were working on last year, and we're getting hung up, and I just, I've thought about it in every way I could and watched every video and doing whatever. And I called Mike to, send him the video, called him, wanted to talk to him about it. And, we sit there and talk, and he goes, people ask me all the time why I don't coach anymore. And he goes, this is it. He said, look at you. He goes, you're laying in bed last night. Like, I was like up at 4, like I wake up to pee at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, how are we going to do this? Like, what are we going to do to get to here? Right. And he goes, people don't understand like how much you're really invested in each person and the time it really takes to do that, because it does. It takes an obscene amount of time, honestly, for one person, but it's like such a special thing, man. Like, when you have somebody that you're both working for a common goal like that, and just the time that you get to spend together doing that, it's like,
it's beautiful.
Man, I'm a sap, but it's literally like what my life's about.
Yeah. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a very good thing.
But Mike cares more than anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like pretty cool. So there's a dude, Matt Reaney, that's like one of the best water ski coaches in the world. And so I was talking to Mike, and Mike used to be such a jerk. He's still a jerk, but he would just never tell you. Like, we used to beg him to say, I love you. We'd be like, Mike, we love you. And
always one of those guys.
And he'd be like, oh, there's a lot of love in this group and whatever. I'm like, Mike, just say it. I know you love me, man. Just say it, And he, it's one of those things, he's proud of you. He loves you, but he's just got that Mike edge, like just not going to let it fully down or whatever. And he told me this year, and I texted Matt to tell him that two of the people that he were most proud of were me and Matt for what we did and, coaching other people. And that was huge to me. Like, that was like one of the greatest validations of my life.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Coming from him. It means extra,
One of the greatest validations of my life.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I have a question on that, because I've heard a lot about him being the best coach, one of the best teachers. Do you need to ride to be a good coach, or ski to be a good coach?
No, I think to have done it, at any level, I think to have done it, to understand those forces is important. But I always say, there used to be like that Romanian couple that coached the U.S. gymnastics team forever. I think they had some kind of scandal. But like forever, like in the 80s and 90s, like Mary Lou Retton or whatever, there's this like Romanian husband and wife that trained the U.S. gymnastics team. And I would always say to people, I go, you think that big fat dude up there on the parallel bars doing that? You think he's balance beaming, pommel horsing? He ain't doing that. He's the best coach in the world, dude.
Yeah.
So I don't think so. I mean, Mike was a very good skier, though.
Yeah.
Insane. I mean, the stuff he was doing, I found a picture recently. Because like before there were a lot of flips and stuff, like trick skiing, there were like line overs where you would take your back foot out and one leg goes over the rope and all this stuff. And so, but it takes time, right? You're taking your foot out, you're kicking your foot in. Literally broke my pinky toe like 3 times. Like can't move it at all to this day from trying to kick it in the boot quick. And Mike rode a trick ski for a while with no rear binding. And he's just
slapping the foot on
set
top.
his foot on the ski, and he's doing very hard tricks like that. And you think about the level of control that takes to do that is insane. But that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. He was always thinking outside the box and trying things different. And he didn't stick with that, so it must not have been the very best thing. But I'm sure he learned a lot by doing it. I'm sure he learned a lot about his balance and how to do certain things and whatever. And I'm sure it made him a better skier, and I'm sure it made him a better coach. But it's one of those things. Like my kids are like really into dance. My oldest like competes and everything. And so like I'll go watch dance competitions and, like I feel a way about the way people are doing things, and I remember like they were trying something like some kind of acro thing and I'm trying to coach them, at home or just help them. And like my little girl's like, well, you can't do this. I'm like, understand movement. So whether I've done this dancing or not, I understand if you push with your legs, it's going to make your head and chest do this or, whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think there's like, my mom never skied at all. I mean, she skied twice in her life the day when she was 16 and the day my brother and I learned to ski. And that's the last time she skied. And my mom got to where she could coach most of the world just from sitting in the boat, and she drove a boat like pre-cruise control. She would drive the boat, pull the release, time my run all at the same time, like, and never skied a day in her life, or she skied 2 days in her life. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting because I think you're right, but my brain initially always goes like, okay, well, the pro rider is going to be the best pro coach. And I want to get into coaching a little bit deeper as well. And I feel like that's a lot of people's brains though.
Sometimes they're the worst though.
Yeah.
They have no idea how they do what they're doing. And then also what they're doing. Like, how would you coach somebody to ride like Massey?
No idea.
Like you're telling me you would take a beginner, you would tell him to cut into the wave like that. You would never do that. Right. I mean, what he's doing works very well. I think he's one of the best looking riders there is.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. But you would never teach someone how to ride like that.
Yeah.
That's
a good point, I think. So I think we kind of continue in. I do want to talk about you driving pro events before we kind of dive into a little bit more with coaching, because I have some more questions on that. But before that, I got a question from Thomas Herman.
Yes.
And he's wondering how many slalom buoys have you run over compared to Thomas?
Thomas, I'll be honest with you. I'm good for about one a year.
That's it?
Yeah. I'm the best driver in the world.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Come on.
I'd be racking on one a day if I'm driving.
I'm good for about one a year, and it always just comes from I'm talking to somebody. I can tell you exactly when my last one was, who I was talking to, and I was just like, we have this guy that comes down, Chris Broom. He's like 67, comes down twice a year for like 2 weeks and wakeboards, and it's insane.
Love it.
And I just love him. He's like the coolest guy. So Chris had just gotten there like first set, and I was pulling Mary Morgan, and I just smoked a boat god, like, and I just, every time I'm like, damn it,
Is it the same reaction every time you do it?
Oh yeah, because it's loud, and you just know, and it's not like, they're $20. It is what it is, like whatever. But Thomas got one more recently than me.
Yeah.
You know, he got one in the past this year. He's this calendar year. So,
I mean, that's less than a month into this team. What's going on, bud?
yeah, no,
You're on pace for 12 a year.
Yeah.
Is what I'm adding up in my head right
no,
now.
very reckless, and it was put in his permanent file.
As it should be.
Yeah, and we're gonna Thomas, look out.
I mean, how many more does he get? Let's be real. How many more buoys does he get before he's out? He's out.
I don't know. I mean, I guess realistically, if I might have to start taking him out of his pay.
That's fair.
I mean, you could hit as many as you want to if you pay for him.
It's true.
And put him back in. I mean, that's kind of the rule too. You take it out,
You definitely got to put it back in.
you got to put it back in. Yeah. So if he,
right away, too.
he just wants to throw me a 20 every time he bangs one out and put it back in, man, he could have a free for all. You know.
Yeah, I want to talk about driving pro events because you kind of touched on it earlier. You were driving pro events way back when. First off, how many events do you think you've driven for?
A lot. I mean, I know 1 year I drove 22 events because I would drive. I mean, there used to be 10 pro tours, and there were whatever nautique events. There would be a couple Malibu events. There was a gravel tour. There would be a random whatever, you know, and I would just drive. I mean, I used to drive. It didn't matter what the boat was, like whatever, I would drive. I was the guy. You know, I drove every event. So, I mean, it's a lot. I hadn't really driven. Excuse me, sorry.
That natty light coming up.
Haven't really driven like that since like 2013 would have been the last year. I think that's the last year Mastercraft did the tour. So that's the last time I really drove any like bulk of events like that. So it's been a while.
Okay.
And now, I mean, I only drive Mastercraft stuff. So I do a water ski event actually at Radar called Herb's Cup.
Yep.
Most fun thing ever.
Looks like a lot of fun.
It's the most fun I've ever had driving a boat.
Wow.
Fun. Not the coolest thing, like not the most standout moment or whatever, but like the most fun hour
ear to ear smile.
You can have driving a boat. It's so fun. And then, you know, I've been doing double or nothing or whatever, and that's really all I drive now.
Okay. Outside of the school.
Yeah.
So I guess back in the day, so I mean, I'm sure you drove X Games too, right?
Yep.
All that stuff.
Yep.
How much would they pay you to drive like a big event like that, like an X Games? You remember what?
Well, it was all under the tour. So it didn't,
Okay.
whether it was, it was all the same thing. Right.
Gotcha.
I mean, every event looked exactly the same,
Yeah.
whether it was the X Games or, you know, the Mastercraft Pro Tour or the Wake Games or whatever. They all looked exactly the same. They just changed the banners on the rail.
Gotcha.
You know, I mean, and I would get to pay the same for all of that. And I knew as this question was going to come up, I kind of don't want to say.
You got a ballpark? Hit us with a ballpark.
Well, here's the situation. Back in the day, I don't know what they pay now, but they would pay judges and drivers, I think it was $150 a day.
Okay.
To judge or drive. And I just got to the point, I mean, I was doing the school, so I was taking time away from that. And it just didn't make sense to me because like they're not paying your travel days, whatever. So like, didn't make sense to be gone for 3 days for $300. And so I finally just, you know, at the time, there's this guy, Scotty Clack, was running the Pro Tour. He's one of the best freestyle jumpers of all time. Scotty was running the tour, and I was like, Scotty, like, I can't do this. You know, I really want to do it, but it just doesn't make sense. And he's like, well, what would? And I don't know. I was hesitant to throw this number out because I didn't want to piss other guys off because there was a lot of guys judging, sat in the boat at the same amount of time I did. And making a lot less. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Okay, that's fair.
But I was happy with the amount of money I was making. It was justifiable to leave and go do that.
And you had some leverage in the sense of everybody wants you to be the one in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And you know that, the tour knows that, the rider knows that, riders know that.
Yeah.
So that was kind of not argument, but you're like, pitch them was, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. And I mean, and they wanted me to do it because I mean, I always say, I don't know how to do a lot of things, but that I know how to do better than anybody. And once again, I just care more than anybody. So like, or as much as anyone, I won't say more, you know, but I'm going to go there and I'm going to do the very best job I can. And it's a lot of times things are messed up, right? Whether it's the lake or there's a river with current or the boat's not the best or whatever it is, and it's messed up. And you got to have somebody that knows what's up to make those situations not look bad sometimes or not be bad for the rider or whatever it is. I mean, we had the X Games in Philadelphia and the Schuylkill River.
Dallas was talking about that.
It's disgusting. It was literally like 4 feet deep. This was when it was like Speedo tubes, so pre-GPS. The Speedos never worked. Never, dude, like the whole time. So I'm just driving off tack and looking at the wake. The cops literally came down there one day at practice and they're like, we're hoping you guys are going to turn some bodies up. I mean, it was disgusting, dude. It was disgusting. But so I drove the X Games, the most important tournament of the entire year, contest of the entire year, with no speedometers. And nobody complained once.
Wow.
You know, so I was just, you know, I was working hard to do what I did. Yeah. And it was very, very important to me. I mean, growing up skiing, I remember walking down, how we were talking about vibes, like you'd walk down to the boat and you'd see somebody sitting in the driver's seat and you're like, oh God, man. Or you would walk down to the boat and you'd see somebody sitting in the driver's seat and you're like, my man, you know, like.
Got a little giddy in my step now that I'm going down to the boat.
And like my goal as a driver for contest or anytime really is I never want them to think one moment about the boat or what the driver's doing. I don't want them to be the slightest doubt in their mind that anything in that boat is going to be less than perfect.
Yeah.
So they can go do what they want to do.
So speaking of that, what happens if you do mess up during someone's pass?
I will say it as I'm messing up. I do it. I've done it a bunch of times in my life because especially when there were rails in the course and whatever, and you know, I'd be on a funky line and, you know, or whatever, or I would be too slow. I mean, I hand drove until 2013.
What do you mean by that for people who are not into boats?
Didn't use cruise control.
Yeah.
Until 2013, I hand drove every contest. So like there's times I'd be like, hey, I'm too far from the rail. I'm too far for the rail, or I'm too close to the rail, or, you know, whatever it is, or hey, I'm a little slow. Like I would say it as they were cutting into the wake, or cause you know, you're in the boat 10, 12 hours, you're doing that same plow the field, you know, no matter how hard you try, occasionally something's going to get a little messed up and people are falling and you're ended up in weird spots and, you know, whatever. So like I would say it as it was happening. So there was no question ever. Like if somebody fell and I would go, oh, well,
after the fact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they go, you know, say it was a Murray or say it was or like, oh, okay.
Hey, your buddy just fell.
Yeah.
Sure, bud.
You know, but yeah, no, I'm the first one to admit fault. I mean, I'm the king of accountability, bud. It's like, if you mess up, put your head down and say you messed up.
Yeah.
Period. Anybody in life, whatever you do.
I can vouch to that because we were supposed to do this podcast, yesterday or 2 days ago, whatever it was.
We were supposed to do it yesterday, and I was driving here on Tuesday.
Thankfully, texted me before you came out, and I double checked. I was like, "Am I wrong?" I thought I was wrong, but to your credit, you immediately said, "Yeah."
Even better, Benny G texted me yesterday. He goes, "Hey, have fun today." I told him I was coming the first. I go, funny thing, and
about that,
he hit me one better. He goes, "Well, if it makes you feel any better," he goes, "I did that Monday for a job interview." Maybe somebody should know he's having a job interview. I don't know. Forget that. Strike that.
Strike that, reverse it. Okay, so meaning we're talking about if you do mess up. So what happens if you do mess up and someone's pro wakeboard to a run? Do they get a rerun?
Yeah. I mean, so pretty much the whole time of me driving, I mean, I think almost the whole entire time, like Chris Bischoff was the chief judge. And Chris is very reasonable and very fair. I mean, he was a rider, right? So he's always going to side with the rider if there's ever a question. And he would ask me, he'd be like, was that what you think needs to happen? And I go, yep. And he goes, well, then that's what needs to happen. You know, and he would fully trust me that what I said, if it was good or bad or whatever, that was what happened, what was going on, and they needed a rerun.
Okay. So he gave you, basically kind of full control over that of transparency. You're obviously, you say it right away. I goofed up, messed up.
Yeah.
Got to run it back.
Yeah.
So parks, Worlds, OWC. What happened there?
Oh, Parks, I love you so much. So Worlds OWC, we used to do double ups in that lake. I mean, I want you to go look at that lake and tell me.
I was there yesterday because I rode. So yeah.
Okay, not only did we do double ups, there would be like 4 apparati, kicker, flat bar, fun box, like whatever. So you would literally spray the walk dock from the big cable. You're like, go around the kicker, spray the walk dock, straighten up, go here. They had to get all the people out of the water because you literally had to go to the water's edge, and then the dock would be right there, and then you would make your way through the maze and hit the double up. And I overteed his double up, and he hit it. So he missed his double half cab roll, and if he'd have made that, he would have won the Worlds. So 100%, I overteed it without question. He hit it.
Did you ask did he ask for a rehit or whatever, or was it just...
You hit it. You hit
That
it.
was
I mean, that's period. If he would have stopped, like, looked at it and said, that's not right and stopped, 100% would have gotten another one.
But if you cruise it in and you hit it,
you
you've committed.
You commit to it. And there were a few weird ones like that at like double or nothing. Cause there was one, I forget who it was. I think his handle actually broke. Cause I forget who it was, but somebody was cutting in and like kind of 10 feet away, they stopped. And we're like, well, what? They were clearly trying not to hit that, but I do think it was something weird, like somebody's handle broke or something. But there was like a little bit of a question on like, what do we do? What do we do here? Because they were, they were moving and then just hit like they pulled e-brake like 10 feet away. And I think we just gave him another one or whatever it was,
Yeah, I feel like that's fair within reason. I mean, it's happening.
But if you come full rip and you throw
a trick,
you planned on hitting.
That's fair. Yeah, I think that's a fair line to draw in the sand there.
Yeah.
Who have been some of the best riders to drive for?
Man,
there's a lot.
There's a lot. I mean, obviously, like Lyman. I mean, Lyman used to help Sean and I some. I mean, I can remember the very first time that he came out and rode with us, and I was just like so blown away, and it was just so cool to watch, and he was so particular about it. I remember, or like I heard with Benny G, like them say, Lyman was that times 10. Like, he'd be like, no, dude, I slipped a grab just at the very end. And everybody's like, you still held it for 3 seconds and you landed 30 feet in the flats. He's like, yeah, but it just, I don't, and I mean, he was just so good. Obviously I've had so much fun pulling Sean over the years. Through the tour, I mean, like everybody's eras, right? I mean, like Ruck's era, I felt was like very special, cause he was a different kind of guy too, he's this Midwest guy and he's just Eric Ruck, just like the coolest, chillest kid ever, and wasn't like trying to, that you have like Phil's era, right? Well, Phil's a dick, so like, can't say I was ever that excited for him to win. Like I really wasn't. It was very impressive. It's super impressive what he did and how consistent he was and how, just ice in his veins. I have multiple stories of like anybody else would have crumbled for sure. And he would say something before and after. Like when Rusty landed his first 1080, Phil was next on the dock and last of the day. So Rusty landed a 1080, first time in a contest. Contest shut down for 20 minutes. Everybody jumped off the dock. It was insane pandemonium. So Phil had his boots on, dude. We did the double up, 2 passes double up. Phil's in his boots. So he got iced for 20 minutes. And then he goes out and he just crushed his runs and stepped it up a bit. And we would stop at the end and wait to do the double up. And as soon as we stopped, we were just silent in the boat because everybody kind of took the wind out of our sails, actually.
That he had stomped the run?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're like, Rusty did, it would have been cool had he won the event as well.
Yeah.
And he sank in the water and he looked in the boat and he goes, one trick doesn't win a contest, boys. And I was like, he's right. And it's actually sick that he did what he did and said it, but it was just the way.
Yeah.
It was just the way, I never really rooted for him, but Harley's era, like all the Aussies, man, there was like a time when like Watkins and Josh Sanders and Ike and all those guys, it was just so fun. It was just so fun. And Watson, and it just, I don't know what the camaraderie is like on the tour now, really. I mean, I see Double or Nothing, but that's also very different where you're getting one person at a time and you're idling out. You don't see really much of what's going on. And I mean, I know a little bit just from, talking with Thomas.
Yeah.
But I feel like that 2000s era, like the camaraderie was just different, and that was all, pointless and whatever. And like those pointless guys, it didn't matter who won as long as one of them won, and everybody was just as excited. It didn't matter. They were interchangeable and they wanted it to be interchangeable. I feel like even like
they didn't want one just to do it all.
Yeah. And that, like, to me, that was so cool and so fun to be a part of and so fun to be in the boat just because there were a lot of guys, and even though there'd be one or two main ones, but it is super fun when somebody's in their air and they're just dominating, and like, like I said, Harley, I still love watching Harley ride, honestly. I feel like every clip he puts up now
he still goes huge. Love it.
It's great.
Yeah.
Great.
Other side of the question, you mentioned a name, but who are some of the worst to drive for?
Man, Phil, he always would find something to complain about, and like a lot of times he'd lose and they would protest and whatever. And it was just like, just wasn't the vibe, it just wasn't fun. I remember, so there's this dude, Rob Struharek, who used to be, he was a great rider. He would ask me to do dumb stuff. Like I remember a contest, he asked me to drive on the other side of the rail because he was whatever for it. He's like, can you drive on the other? I'm like, no. He's like, yeah, but there's room between the shore and the thing. And I'm like, I learn how to hit it toe side, bud. Like, you get to hit it coming back the other way. Like, whatever. And I just remember him. He was just like a little edgy.
Always had some weird requests or something.
Yeah. And just his he was pretty intense. Honestly, in recent years, I can't think about too many people that I wasn't that pumped on.
Yeah.
Honestly, I want every single person to do well. I really do. And in perfect scenario, every single person rides as well as they can, and then the best guy wins.
Of course. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I want to be a part of it, helping everyone do the very best they can. And then the best guy wins. And I remember a few contests like that. I remember this one year in Fort Worth, we just come out with the new X-Star, and the wake was huge. And that thing was like that 2013 to 17, that thing was lippy, bro. That thing was, Harley was doing those double tantrums real easy off that thing and whatever. And that final was crazy. Every single person, I remember we'd be at the end, we're like, holy crap, But yeah, for the most part, it's fun. I love wakeboarding, dude. I love it.
Yeah.
So
it's sick. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of further into that a little bit, obviously through all the pro events you've driven, I'm sure some people have complained either to the judges or to you about the driving, and maybe there was something wrong with the driving. Has anyone ever complained because they lost? You don't have to name names if you don't want to, but because the driving was wrong, but it wasn't. Was that something that happened somewhat frequently at all, or was that kind of not something?
I don't think that ever happened.
Okay.
I really don't. Because like I said, if I was messing up,
you'd be the one to say.
I'd be the first one, dude.
Yeah.
And there's times that we had contests that the boats weren't right, and I was vocal about it. Like I got in trouble.
How so boats weren't right?
There was one year a boat company switched to throttle by wire where you don't have a throttle cable. And the boat would not maintain speed. It would not do what it was supposed. It was not right.
Yeah.
And in the first 8 guys, I'd given 5 re-rides or something. I remember Jeff McKee cutting in. The boat's at 18 miles an hour. He just got snapped off doing a crow mob. And I'm like, guys.
That's not acceptable.
Yeah. I beached the boat. I pulled the boat on the shore. I go, I'm not driving this boat anymore.
So what happened? You get another boat or what?
Got another boat.
Okay. Figured it out.
Yeah. But it wasn't received well.
Well, and I'm sure that that's also a reason why if you're the first person to admit when a mistake happens and you see whether it's a boat not being acceptable or whatever, the riders see that and they go, okay, well, I mean, he's on our side. Like he wants it just as much as we do in a sense. So.
Yeah. And there was one other scenario similar to that. And I was vocal about it. And not that one where I beached the boat. I literally got on the thing. I go, I'm not driving this boat anymore.
Yeah.
So y'all figure it out because I'm getting out of it. I'm not going to look like an asshole out here because you messed up. And it wasn't fair to those kids.
Yeah.
That's what the deal. It's not fair to those kids, dude. They've worked their asses off and they put every penny they had into it. And this is their time to do it. And you're not going to give them the right opportunity to do that. That's wrong. Period. I will get very...
Well, that's why it's good to have a guy like you or you in that position.
I'll get mad about that.
Yeah.
Okay?
As you should. I think as you should.
Yeah. And then we had another situation like that a couple years later, and the boat just wasn't, it was overweighted and not getting on plane. And I was like, I don't care if this thing runs 9,000 RPMs all day long. Let's get this thing on plane, whatever. And, the guy straight up said to me, he goes, you wouldn't be saying this if it was a Mastercraft. And I go, well, you're wrong, because 2 weeks ago we had a qualifying tour stop and they brought a boat. It was with that. It ended up being great because it was a Texas Mastercraft. I don't know if he's still there, but they had this dude, Jeff, that was one of the best Mastercraft techs in the world. Like, incredible. And they brought a boat down. It was a new X-Star. Had not been water tested. It just finished like that day. Thing wasn't water tested and it broke down in like the first hour. And those, back in the day, man, there would be 100+ kids trying to qualify. And it's in Fort Worth and it's 1,000,000 degrees and you're barely getting it done anyway. And I was mad. I was like, how do y'all show up here like this? I was like, come on, man.
Yeah, it's unacceptable.
Yeah. And I said to the guy, I go, you're wrong. At them, I will actually cuss at, and I will say words and I'll be like, what the F is wrong with you? Why did you do this? I'm just sitting here telling you nicely that things need to change and you think I'm an asshole for it.
Yeah.
So, and then from that day on, I never drove another contest in that boat.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I had a contract to drive for the rest of the year, and they terminated it.
See, I mean, I think that sucks because, like, you're getting emotional about it, as I think you should, and I think it's such an important thing. Like you were saying, people spend their hard-earned money, their time to train, to go to this event, to give it their best, and whether they're going to win or not doesn't matter. It's the fact that they put all that work in beforehand.
100%.
They deserve the best from these, whatever company it is, big companies with plenty of money, that they can get a boat that works right on scene and make sure beforehand.
Yeah.
Everything else is just excuses as to why it's not happening. And we don't need those. Get the boat on scene.
And in both of those cases, people with them told them it was a problem before.
Yeah. So can't be having that.
Yeah. I had Ferraro on the dock with me one of those cases with, like, had my back real hard.
Yeah. Not surprised. That's good.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love hearing that because I think you never really hear those stories of when something goes wrong, someone's sticking up for it. But you need that. You need those people. Otherwise, like you said, those kids aren't getting the proper ride and then they get pissed off and then they don't want to do it anymore because I didn't get my fair shake. That's not right.
And I mean, that being said, I do feel like overall, most all the contests, they do have best interest in mind.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I do feel that.
Yeah, I'm sure we're talking bad apples here, but when they do arise, those situations arise, you gotta.
Oh man, I was hot.
Be prepared.
Still hot. Still hot.
It's hot down here in Orlando.
Keep it down.
All right, so we got a more lighthearted question from Ollie DeRome. He's wondering, how many times have you seen riders puke mid-run over the years?
Oh man, I don't know mid-run.
Sounds like Ollie might be referring to something.
I mean, it's had to have happened. I remember for sure guys on the starting dock. I'm like,
yeah.
The boys used to go hard, man. I don't know if they still do, but I mean, it was like the boys.
You mean go hard how?
Like partying at night.
The night before.
Oh, yeah. Okay. We'd go out. I mean, because it was, they were like rock star-ish, right, for what we're doing. And they're in this town and they're having fun. And, guys are going out and making the most of that situation, right? And I mean, I remember multiple times. I remember one time, I think in Michigan, and I think of like two guys I think they were both Australian, honestly. But like two guys were like throwing up on the starting dock right before they went out. And I think they both killed it, honestly.
It lightened up a little bit. Agile with the
Yeah.
empty stomach.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I've never seen it, but that's he must have been referring to mid.
I mean,
maybe he did.
I mean,
or
maybe.
something.
My memory has lost a lot of things over the years.
You've pulled a lot of people. So
Yeah.
I actually got another fascinating question from Bill Porter.
Yep.
A Patreon question. So legend, obviously, Bill Porter. It's a long one, so kind of bear with me here, but I think it's a great question to tee up. And he's going, I've witnessed you save numbers of grassroots riders on runs where they're not going to make a trick, and through your driving, whether it's adjusting the speed, boat path, wake, etc., you saved them. Are there some basic tips you can offer to boat drivers to help save a rider from not making a trick?
Yeah, like I'm obviously watching the takeoff and the landing very hard. So, I mean, I don't care what level you are. There's a point if you watch enough wakeboard and you know when as somebody's leaving the wake, it's not right? You're like, oh God, we'll scream a lot of times. We're like, and so, I never take my hand off the throttle. I'm super serious about, you watch every wakeboarder, and I bust Thomas's chops about this. Like every pro wakeboarder, they drive turned around backwards. They're not holding onto the throttle. They're not looking in the mirror. They're one hand, they're looking around. And I always had like a running joke. It's like, you know how I know I'm getting a good pull? The guy's standing up, turned around backwards. I said, no, for sure I'm getting a good pull then. So like I'm like hand on the steering wheel, hand on the throttle, watching in the mirror very intently the whole time. And when that's happening, like you can, throttle chop and or turn into them. So you're like softening up the landing, and taking some tension off the rope. But there's also times like if you cut the throttle too early, you're going to not allow them an opportunity to use the rope to get to a better spot. But like, a lot of times like with students, like they don't know how to get to a better spot, right? I mean, they're beginning, they're doing their first inverts, their first threes. They don't know where the hell they are. They're come off the wake and you're just like, buddy, I'm just trying to take 3 miles an hour off this real quickly if I can, or, take some tension off of it. And so like the main thing is just watching that and just, trying to give some throttle chop and just soften up that landing a little bit.
Okay. I would say that was probably the biggest one, especially if you're a wakeboarder learning and you have your driver kind of communicate about that. It doesn't have to be perfect. Obviously, it's not going to be to your level, I'm sure, but even a little bit,
it
all
helps, man.
Yeah. So second part of that, it's kind of referring to the first part. He's going, was there a pro contest where your driving specifically helped a pro rider bring home some money? And did they share the love with you?
I don't know.
Dollar bill sign, dollar bill sign.
I don't think so. I mean, I do know, like, one of the first contests I drove, I think the first contest I drove actually was OWC. So back in the day, they used to send out like a questionnaire to all the riders and stuff from the year before and be like, rate these judges, rate these drivers, like, who would you like to see back, whatever. And at the time I hadn't driven any events, but I was driving a boat all the time. A lot of guys would come ride with us. And so a couple of guys asked me, like, would you want to do it? Are you interested in doing it? I'm like, honestly, I don't know. Cause I mean, like I said, I grew up skiing and I think people would, especially back, I don't know if it's still like this, but like, would hate on ski drivers. And, I'm like, I don't know if I want that kind of heat on me, man. I don't need that, So the first one was at OWC, and I said, look, I'll come do it, and you don't have to pay me, so there's no pressure. And if I like it, we'll see what happens. And if you like me being there, we'll see what happens, and we can go from there. But I just want to do this with no pretense, no pressure, no nothing. I just want to, we'll see how it goes. So I'd been driving the boat maybe an hour, and I think it was Bish. I mean, was like, hey, if you want to do this the rest of the year, this is your gig. So I remember, I don't remember who it was. I remember where it was, and I remember the trick. Somebody landed a chromo far ended going east on OWC. Somebody landed a chromo and was going to get smoked. Like, was just a little tight. And it was just instinct. I was not trying to do it. And I just chopped the throttle and they passed the handle and then I took off. And the boat stopped. I'm talking record scratch, dude. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, dude, I wasn't trying. I didn't even, it's just instinct. Like I'm trying not to hurt people all day long.
Yeah. I can't turn that off.
Yeah. I was like, the kid was going to get dealt with, and they're like, man, you can't really do that, and I'm like, all right. And I just kept kind of doing it. Maybe not that aggressive. I mean, cause that kid, I literally chopped the throttle.
Yeah. You hear the engine go down.
I mean,
yeah.
But I just kept doing it. And basically it was like, hey, if you do it for everyone all the time, then what's the harm?
And that's what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then to me, like one of my biggest things is like what we're doing out there, that's a show, period. That's a show. It is a sporting event and it's huge, but as long as you're fair with everybody all the time doing it, everybody's going to get their day. And if you put on the best show all the time, people are going to be more into it. So, that's where I was coming from with it, and that's like so far from the water ski. You did it in the water ski world. I mean, I did it in a event, our Herb's Cup event. And I mean, we were at this place called Crescent Bar. Beautiful, but it's just like this cliff face. Wind was blowing 30 miles an hour and it was crazy, like white capping. And so all the guys agreed to go 34 miles an hour. Pro men go 36, women go 34. So all the guys go, hey, we're going to go 34. And, everybody, there's people on shore. It's pretty far away. But people on shore watching. So, and they all started a line length longer than they normally would because it's easier. I think Brooks Wilson was first. He turned one ball, was not going to make it to two, like first pass. So I start moving the boat. You can like weave the boat through the course. I'm like moving the boat and I'm talking aggressively, bud. And there's this guy that runs this Ball of Spray website, very active. It's like water skis Wake World, but actually,
oh yeah, I know exactly.
Actually functional.
Yeah.
Don't think Wake World's a thing anymore. And he was filming the whole time and didn't really realize it. And then he puts his camera down and then he just sees me and he's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you can't do this. You can't do this. And it's not a sanctioned tournament. It's just for fun. I'm not a sanctioned water ski driver.
That's not what Herb's Cup is.
Yeah. And I go, well, Freddie just ran 2 at 41. So-and-so just did this. I'm like, we can either do it like this and they can put up these scores, or I can drive normal and nobody makes a pass. I go, you have it. It's up to you.
Yeah.
I go, it's a show. It's up to you. And he just could not let it go, dude. The whole weekend, he would just be muttering under his breath. And I'm like, and so the next day was a little better. We went 35 and I drove a little straighter, and the next day was perfect. And we went 36. I drove dead nut straight, and everybody did. The scores were the same almost every day, but it's a show.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Did any of the skiers say anything?
They all knew it.
Yeah.
They wanted it. Right.
That's kind of a bump set spike bang. You're good.
That's why they like me driving Herb's Cup, bud. Like, I'm not a traditional water ski driver. It's not a traditional event. It's fun.
Yeah. Right. You're going to have some fun. Put some scores up.
Let's do it. Let's go.
Love it.
Yeah. But yeah, ultimately we're trying to grow the sport and we're trying to get more eyes on it. We're trying to make it seem cool, and as long as it's fair for everybody.
Yeah. I think you hitting the nail on the head there. As long as it's fair for everybody.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Even if I don't like you, I'm not going to screw you.
Because you couldn't live with yourself if you did. I think we dive into some specifics on coaching and teaching.
Okay.
And I think we kick it off with a question from none other than Benny G.
Yep.
And he's wondering, how did you land on the strategy of demeaning your customers, and why do you think it works so well? Have you seen a lift in business since you started calling the people that pay you dummies?
Yeah, people like it. I don't know how that came about, honestly. I just, our place is just so perfect all the time. I mean, it's just so perfect. Even windy days, man. One of those lakes is going to be glass calm. I know it's way better than anywhere like in the world, man. I mean, especially Orlando. I mean, there's days that I'm watching people's stories on Conway or in Claremont or whatever, and I'm like, dear Lord, that's what the real world looks like today. Because
paddle out, catch a wave out there.
Yeah, because our place is almost perfect, And so the you're in the wrong spot thing just kind of started, just like, man, you're in the wrong spot. Look at this place, And then I'm pretty funny. You know, like I'm
Just
funny.
ask me. I'm pretty funny.
Yeah, I like having fun. You know, and I'm a sarcastic humor guy.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So it wasn't like I was trying to. It just came pretty naturally, and people somehow are gravitated to it.
I think it's real.
Yeah.
It's hard not to gravitate towards people.
People
who are
have
real.
gravitated to it and they like it. And people, it was funny. We were at like sushi one night in town and this guy comes walking by and he goes, "You're in the wrong spot." Like just whispered in my ear as he walked by, and my little girls are like, "How does he know that?" I was like, "Oh no," you know, and it was just like this wakeboard kid worked at the sushi place and just,
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk. I do want to talk about, how people can, book trips and whatever with the boarding school, but we can kind of get that at the end. So coaching, teaching, I'm wondering, so we'll do wakeboarding and water skiing, but what are the top 3 things that someone should know when they're learning wakeboarding? That either a coach can instill or the person trying can instill.
How to stand on your board, period. Number 1, alignment. That's water skiing and wakeboarding, alignment, period. I have a bunch of standard lines, but one of my standard lines is we're trying to stand in a position to best accept the pull of the boat and the push of the water. And if you can do that, you can do anything you want to on a wakeboard or water ski. The person that stands over a board or ski the best is the best skier. Look at Joel Poland right now, water skier.
Kid's the king.
The king.
Yeah.
He can stand over anything, dude. Like, period. I mean, it's insane. Like, it's insane. Like, it's funny. He was out skiing with me and Freddie Winter, and I was watching. He goes, "You got anything?" And I just asked him 2 questions. I go, "Why are you doing this?" And then he fixed them, and Freddie goes, "Man, you Ferrari'd him." I'm like, "Yeah." I go, "Who am I to tell Joel Poland how to stand on a ski?" Like, come on, And if standing over the ski and having alignment is the most important, and then just doing that, figuring out how to control the line support. Everybody I think thinks you have to go so much faster and so much harder than you do, and there's all this talk about a progressive edge. I don't think a progressive edge is what 99% of the world thinks a progressive edge is. And most people think a progressive edge is you cut towards the wake and you have to start cutting harder the whole time. Okay? In broadband theory, that is true. But if you cut out beside the boat, my whole thing is you cut out it pretty much as wide as you can. We don't cut wide to go fast. We cut wide to go slow. You start close, you got to rip on it. You start wide, you can go as slow as you want to. It's not about speed, it's about direction. So I'll have people cut out as wide as they can, go completely flat and glide. The second you feel rope tension in your hand, you just roll in. You don't have to turn. You don't have to do some big movement. You don't have to pull on your arms. You don't have to do anything. You roll in and you ride that line all the way through. If you're in a strong position and you maintain your edge, you're going to go faster. It's no different than putting a car at the top of a hill in neutral and letting it roll. It's going to go faster. You're not doing anything to make that happen. It's the way it works. And so I think most people have a huge misconception about how they should be cut into the wake. And for someone learning to learn wake jumps, grabs, threes, all your basic inverts, that's the only way to cut in. And I will fight over that. People coach wrong all the time, and they tell people to pull on the handle off the top of the wake and cut harder as you got. It's not the way you do it. And by telling people to do those things, they end up creating all these other problems, and that's how they end up getting smoked. If you're in a strong position and you maintain your lean, your board is always between you and the boat, period. If your board's between you and the boat all the time, you're safe. It's a shield. So I go, your face can be a shield or your board can be a shield. Boards are way better. Worst case scenario, you fall on your butt, right? Or maybe you case the second wake and you get dumped over the side or whatever.
Take that all day though.
Yeah. And so the same with skiing. I mean, it's 100% alignment. If you're in a strong position to accept the pull of the boat and the push of the water or push of the wake, you can do whatever you want to. And if you minimize movement and you go, like one of my biggest things is only going as fast as you have to for what you're doing.
Okay. Dive into that a little bit more.
So if you're doing a wake to wake jump, you don't have to go that fast. Even if you're doing wake to wake anything, you don't have to go that fast. So you go to do a tantrum, you're scrubbing all your speed at the wake, so you got to go faster. You're doing a rayleigh, you got to go faster, right? So there's things that you do need to go faster for. There's there's line support and there's line tension. So line support is what you're looking for 90% of it. I mean, most people's wakeboarding, like the average person, you're looking for this rope just to be consistent and hold you up and tell you that everything's fine, right? And if you have this consistent line, you can come off the wake. If you come off the wake and know how you're going to come off the wake and the line's not fighting you, it makes sense to try things. If you can't come off the wake every single time and the line is fighting you, a crapshoot at that point.
Yeah.
Right? But then there's line tension to where like you're doing a railie or you're doing some glides or you're doing even like some off-axis spins or whatever, like, you know, that you want to get like this like kind of set and release. And, you know, obviously a lot of guys are doing that more now. Like the wakes are so huge and, you know, for what they're doing, a lot of guys now are just doing like that, a lot of like set and release and kind of stuff. But for the average wakeboarder, that doesn't make sense to do. Like if you're learning a wake jump or you're learning a 180 or a 3 or a back roll or whatever, it doesn't make sense to do that.
Okay. That's huge. That's a big nugget of golden information. I think that a lot of people.
That one's free.
The first one's free.
Come to the boarding school. We'll expand on that.
Well, I mean, there's only so much that words, I mean, that's super helpful, but again, there's only so much that words can help, which I'm sure it will a lot, but it does help a lot to be with someone physically in person.
Yeah.
So, curious we're talking about wakeboarding, water skiing. What's the breakdown that you see at the boarding school in terms of skiing, wakeboarding, and wake surfing about people that are coming out?
Man, it's changed a lot. You know, we do more and more skiing every year. I mean, our ski clientele is really growing. And
interesting.
I do think there's a bit of a resurgence of skiing. One, from a standpoint, you have guys like me that are 45. I'll be 52 next week. Not today, Thomas. Before 52 next week. But like you'll have all these guys that grew up skiing, switch to wakeboarding. Now they're 40, 45, 50, and they don't want to just only wake surf. And they're like, you know, hey, I'm going to get back into skiing. So we see that a lot where guys are like transitioning like back. And I do feel like, you know, skis are better. The boats are better. It's like there's plenty of slalom skis that are really user-friendly to where if you get up, like I can get anybody that's a good wakeboarder up on a slalom ski pretty much first try and have them carving around pretty comfortably. But I don't think that was always the case, you know, whether the skis weren't as good or the wakes were bigger or whatever it is. So I do feel like it's gotten more user-friendly. And then too, I just feel like most ski places are not like our place. They're way more uptight, very different vibe. So I think people are just kind of finding out. And like there's definitely super hardcore guys that would not come to us simply because we're called the boarding school. You suck. I mean, I had a guy last year, he ended up being incredible, but this guy grilled me about, you know, asking me all these questions. Well, are you really serious about it? I'm like, well, I've got the best conditions in the world. I've got the best boat, brand new ProStar 6.2. I've got the world champion living here. What makes you think we're not serious about water skiing? Well, it's called the boarding school. I'm just scared the guys are going to be partying and whatnot. And so I justified myself to him for like 20 minutes. And then I finally go to him. I go, hey, I don't know if we're the right fit for you. And he was like, no, I think. And he ended up being awesome. Like came and just was like, oh God, I can like be a normal person here.
Oh, wow. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah. You know? But we do have a stigma because we're called the boarding school, which is fine. I don't want those people. Honestly, I don't want them. Like years ago when Brooks worked with me, he was out in the boat and I had this skier show up and he's like, hey, I've got a 1020 with Brooks. And I'm like, yeah, he's got like 2 more passes of this set and he's got 1 more set. I'm like, sorry, running a little bit behind or whatever. He's like, yeah, but I've got a 1020. And I'm like, well, got 2 more passes of this set, got 1 more set in front of it. Yeah, and I'm like, I can tell you that again, but that's where we're at, right? And he was just like, because like most places, your name's on a whiteboard, and if you're 2 minutes late, that's 2 minutes off your set and whatever. And I've worked in places like that, and from day one, even with like wakeboarding, from the standpoint, I do not want to run a place like that. I will not run a place like that. I mean, there's days we're so busy it has to be.
There's a line, right? You've got to be.
It runs tight.
On top of it.
You got to run tighter, but like, you know, I always jokingly be like, if you go to the doctor and you've got a 9 o'clock appointment, what time do you walk in the doctor's office? 9:15, 9:30, 9:45. You know, I mean, like, it's just that's the way the world works sometimes. The guy got in his car and left. And so Brooks was like, what happened to that dude? And I told him the story, and he goes, then he wasn't our guy. I'm like, 100% wasn't our guy. Glad I got rid of you now.
Yeah.
Because you were going to be a pain in the ass somewhere along the way, and now
This isn't the place for you.
Now I don't have to worry about it. You're in the wrong spot.
You are in the wrong spot, even though you're in the right spot.
Yeah. You know?
Put his brain in a pretzel there.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious. I actually got a Patreon question that asks just about this from Chase Rucker, and he's going, you've been around top athletes in both skiing and wakeboarding. You just mentioned a bunch. How does the environment and vibe between them differ? And if you had to choose only one, which would it be?
Well, I mean, I just kind of went into how it differs.
Yeah.
It's just way more intense, and everything's just skiing. I mean, that was one of the huge things that drove me away from skiing. You know, it's just way more uptight, and, you know, everybody for them, like judging, driving, running those organizations, they're half dead. They got one foot in the grave. They're 75 years old and holding on to some sense of power and whatever. And it's like, get out of here, man. I mean, and granted, you have to have a young guy that takes the power to go do something like that. So if there's no young guys want to step up and do that, then you can't bitch about it.
Yeah.
But there are guys doing that. I mean, there's all these young guys are running the Waterski Pro Tour and handling the website and the webcast. Like the Waterski webcast are insane.
Yeah, I've watched a few. Yeah.
They're insane. They kill anything wakeboarding has ever done. I mean, they're so well done and watchable. You know, I mean, how many webcasts have you watched? Like, I'll be like, man, I love you, but I can't tell me how you did because this is painful.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, wakeboarding is obviously way more laid back and way more fun. It's just way more social. I mean, you know, water skiers don't want people in the boat. Wakeboarders want everybody in the boat. It's just like, you know, I think water skiers are definitely more particular. Obviously, guys are particular about the wake and stuff. Somehow, shockingly enough, I found that wake surfers are becoming more particular than water skiers.
See, yeah, I'm not surprised.
And you're just like, bro, you're wake surfing. Calm down. Like, and I'm not I'm not taking anything away from wake surfing. I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay. But like, okay, we'll change the lip of the wake or whatever. Like we can fix it. Like, calm down. You know, like
not in the sense that you could be kind of picky or whatever of what you want, but the attitude, it sounds like maybe is a little bit over the top.
Yeah. You're just like, what, bud? You know, I mean, years ago, Tyga did a wakeboard and wake surf event, and I was driving, and Ruck was one of the judges, and guys were so uptight, man, and they would fall. And Tyga at the time, like they had to weight the boat one way or the other, so it was like, so the boat was literally like it was
listing hard,
nightmare to drive.
Yeah,
guys would fall, and they would not move 1 foot to the rope because they didn't want to lose like core space. Right, you're going 10.5 miles an hour, bud. You got plenty of room left, you know, like whatever. And Ruck finally was like, "Hey guys, y'all taking this a little too serious." And he rode for Tyga at the time.
Yeah,
he's like, "Y'all taking this a little too seriously, guys. You gotta calm down a little bit, you know." And but yeah, just a very different vibe between wakeboarding and skiing. But I mean, I will say at our place, like there's not. I mean, it's not a ton different because if you come to my place, you know you're going to the boarding school. You know there's going to be wakeboarders there. You know there's going to be wake surfers there. It's not just going to be 10 ski guys. You know what you're getting into, you know? And I remember so Brooks Wilson was the first guy that coached skiing at my place. And you know Brooks, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, Brooks is one of the most talented skiers I've ever seen. I mean, we always say if there was some weird ass decathlon of slalom skiing, Brooks would win it every year. He's like, he can ride anything, man. It's super cool. But Brooks came to work with me, and he's just, no matter how serious he is about skiing, he's as knowledgeable. He's I think he's one of the top water ski coaches in the world. It's just very simple, very relatable. You know, there's no one in the world I would rather ski with than Brooks Wilson, period. Like
Brooks Wilson, one of one.
Period.
Yeah.
Hands down, period. My guy. But Brooks is also very light and goofy and doing dumb shit all the time and whatever. So there's certain skiers that wouldn't be drawn to that. So he was there. And then when Freddie Winter started working with me, he's like, dude, I don't know how you did it, but you have the perfect client. You've created the perfect water ski client. And I go, well, honestly, it was a combination of me and Brooks. Brooks had these people that followed him. And then they came there and they liked the place because it was that kind of vibe and not a water ski vibe, And then, two, I do get a lot of people. I'll get groups. I booked one yesterday where I'll have people that'll ski one set, ride one set, surf one set.
That's sick.
Do that and it's sick. I love it. People are like, is that okay? And I'm like,
yes.
That's the intention of the place. Like, there's nothing that makes me happier than when somebody's like, oh yeah, dude, I'm going to do this now, or, whatever. And because it's all the same thing, dude. It's all the same thing. So if you hate on water skiing, or if you hate on wakeboarding, or you hate on wake surfing, or you hate on foiling or whatever, it's all the same freaking thing, dude. You're with a rope behind a boat and, it's all the same. Like, you're talking about coaching things, like people jump in the boat, they go, oh, that's the same thing you're telling me skiing. Oh, it's the same thing you're telling me wakeboarding. Because it's the same thing, period.
Yeah, just the size and shape of what you're standing on.
It's just different, it's like, whatever. But yeah, no, I love it when people do that, man. It's one of my favorite things.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And I think to your point, we are seeing a little bit of a resurgence in skiing is fun. And I think that's the kind of the message that needs to be.
Yeah.
Like a guy like Joel Poland, I go on his Instagram, I watch some stuff he does. That looks fun.
Yeah.
I probably won't find myself on a trick ski, but I might mess around, jump on a slalom. That looks pretty damn fun. You're going fast.
that one he put up on the whip backwards on his trick ski yesterday.
I don't know how he does that.
Insane.
Yeah.
But I never answered your question.
Yeah.
Breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're probably 60-40. But that's wake
surfing and boarding.
And and skiing. And there's times a year I was talking about one of my students today, like definitely in the later fall and winter and early spring, we do more skiing, it seems like. Although I've had a real heavy wake January, which has been amazing. Had an incredible solid crew, like six guys, young guys, pushing hard. I'd walk in the house in the morning, they're watching wakeboard videos, and I texted Benny Jim, like, it's like 2005 in here, dude. It's like insane. It makes me happy to know those crews still exist.
Yeah.
And like this week, we had a couple younger guys like that. And I was just like, man, this makes me so hopeful right now that I'm just seeing these younger, like early 20s that are riding hard and pushing each other. Because for a while, I kind of thought that died, to where you're getting, I do so many families and stuff. So it's different to where, I get a guy that went out and spent a bunch of money on a boat, doesn't know what to do with it. And they're coming to me. And so, I'm getting, mom, dad, brother, sister,
orientation,
maybe
kind of
granddad.
thing.
It's cool. We've had a couple of 3 generations.
It's cool too.
At the same time, which is insane. But I am pushing for wakeboarding as hard as I can. I think what you're doing right here is one of the most important, best things that's happened to wakeboarding in a very long time.
Wow, thank you.
I do. I think this is the coolest. If you don't subscribe for $10 or $5, I did 10. There's a 5 and a 10. You should just do it right now. If you like wakeboarding, you should do it right now so this keeps happening. This is very important what you're doing.
Love it.
It really is. The fact that you moved here to do this and you're committing this kind of time to it and you're giving people a platform, it's
going to bring a tear to my eye.
This is super important. This is huge. It's incredible.
Love it.
Yeah.
Dang. I get emotional on this one. Oh, man. Okay. All right. So let's kind of more serious thing, I guess. Have you ever had any issue with parents, or coaches, parents, I guess, for the most part, not agreeing necessarily with the coaching style that's going on? Maybe not with you, but at the boarding school as a whole. And how do you deal with that, I guess? Because that's
not really. So when we have parents there, before we ever get on the boat, I talk to them and I say, hey, you're welcome to ride on the boat as much as you want. You don't have to get on a boat once. You could ride the entire time. What we ask, if you get on the boat, that you're seen and not heard. And I'm not saying that you can't be cheering your kid on and going, oh, yeah, like whatever. But by no means do you ever coach over me, because I don't coach over. Like if there's 2 of us in the boat, like we don't coach over each other. Like generally we do our best for just that one person. If I'm driving, Thomas is coaching or whatever. And occasionally somebody will throw something out. But like if you're working with that person for that 20 minutes, you're working with that person, right? There's no interference coming off from something else. But if you want to go, yeah, right on, you got it, bud, or whatever. But you can't be screaming over me. If you think there's something that needs to be happening differently, you tell me, and then we'll talk about it, and then that will may or may not be relayed to your kid. And most people are totally understanding of that. And then, I mean, I had once that I told this lady, she gets out of the car with a notebook, and I'm like, oh God. And so I tell her, and she's like, ooh, it's going to be very hard for me. It's going to be very hard for me. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's the way it works here, whatever. The kid came down. He learned like 3 or 4 tricks that day. By their own admission, it was the best he had ever ridden. Okay? We're on the last set of the day. He did 4 sets that day. He was there one day. He was on his 4th set, and he was trying something, and they were wanting to they were trying to get one more trick, because they're just like doing drugs, like, oh God, one more. Oh, he's going to get one more, and the kid was exhausted, and whatever we're working on, he's like, man, I just kind of want to do like grabs or something and just ride.
There you go, kid.
I just want to ride. He's like, I've never ridden this much before. I'm just tired. And the mom and dad just start beaking instantly. Oh, you've ridden more than this. And just like, we're jerks. And like I said, by their own admission, the best he had ever ridden. And I just looked at him. I go, stop talking. Stop talking. And I turned around. I go, yep, grabs, bud. Whatever grabs you want to do, let's do them. And we get up, and I just let him have it. I go, you may do that at your place. You may do that somewhere else. I go, you will not do that at my place. You will not do it. And I said to him, I go, you yourself said this is the best this kid's ever ridden, and you're not happy right now? You got a problem.
Getting greedy.
And they never came back. But well,
you stand by, though, what you do.
I believe, really, I know there's people doing a good job coach. I know there's other people doing a really good job coaching. I have no problem admitting that.
Yeah.
I know we do an incredible job. And I know it's because, we care so much, man. And like Thomas, dude, I've worked with a lot of really good people. I worked with Murray. Murray's incredible. I worked with, Josh. You should have Josh Palma on here. I don't know if you know Palma.
Oh, yeah, I want to have Josh Palma on
Okay,
here.
you should have Palma on. Jeff Langley would be freaking hilarious. Had this kid, Kyle Rattray. Lyman worked with us. Robbie Jakes. Trying to think of like main guys. I've had a lot of really, really, good guys work with me. And then, like now with like Scott Stewart. Scott Stewart worked with me
I was going to
for
throw that name out there, yeah. 6
or 7 years. And Scott's an incredible coach. And he didn't ride like the last 2 years he worked with me. He was just over. I'd say a very similar experience to my water ski deal with him wakeboarding.
Yeah.
But he would come to work every day and be just as passionate about coaching as ever, and was an incredible coach. Is an incredible coach, And then same Thomas. Thomas is such a different vibe, especially coming from Scott, who was like, and then you got Thomas. Such an incredibly different ride, but once again, like so passionate about it and so invested in it that we do a great job.
Yeah, absolutely. So book that trip. Come on.
Book that trip,
Come on,
y'all.
it's cold up there in the north. You know that.
Book that trip.
So I want to talk setups. So this can kind of be, you probably still ride and ski every now and again.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
I mainly ski. I ski a lot. That being said, I didn't ski once this week because it was kind of cold at the start, and then we're working on property, and I'm trying to get things ready for March. So right now, if I don't get it done this month, it doesn't happen till next fall. But I still mainly ski. I ski a lot. I will wakeboard a couple of times a year, whether it's Mastercraft needs an old guy, needs a dad wakeboarding.
For a shoot or something.
Somebody shames me into it, dude, just ride or whatever. Or Thomas, I do really want to go out on the boat with Thomas. Thomas has been asking me to come to his house and ride. And it's just, I don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
between the camp and my family and whatever, I don't have a ton of time. But I do really, really want to go ride with Thomas at his place and just on his boat. I think it's so cool to get your first boat. I mean, talk about validating things, like getting your first boat and being able to take your friends on it or your family. Like his family was just, his mom, I think, is coming this weekend. It'll be the first time she's been on the boat with him. He had his dad and his stepmom were down for the Rider of the Year, and he got to take his dad and his stepmom out on the boat. And like, I've done that. And it's just like, it's so cool, that like, those are the people that bought you your first boat. They took you to the lake every day, invested so much time and money and blood, sweat, and tears into it. And, you're like, we made it.
Hop on, let's go.
We
I got
made
this.
it. And I do want to go ride with Thomas really badly. I promise you, I'm going to make it happen.
You gotta.
Yeah. So I'll surf a little bit with my girls on the weekends and stuff like that. But yeah. So if I were to ride a wakeboard,
wakeboard first.
I am one in.
Okay.
I am slightly directional.
Love that.
So I'll be 12 and 12 front or back. I'm sorry, 12 and 12 back, and then I slightly turn my front foot forward. So I guess because I'm a water skier. So no matter what, the reason I did it, if I set up my boots symmetrical, I'm always trying to get like this.
Try and kind of compensate.
My body's that's what it knows to do. It knows how to go straight.
Yeah.
Right. So no matter what, my body's trying to do that, and I'm like, why am I fighting this, dude? Just freaking turn it a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm like, whatever that is, I guess it's 9 and 15. Would it be 9 and 15? I don't know, but it's just like one click.
One click more than your back foot.
Yeah.
In that direction. Okay.
Yeah. And one in. And then, the last times I've ridden, I'll ride the one board. I rode the District for a long time. I have had periods where I would ride. When we first got to our place now, I would ride a good bit. And then, honestly, I was riding, once again, I can tell you where I was on the lake. I was riding with Palma, just me and Palma out there. I cased the wake on a back roll, and I thought I blew my knee out. And it was just sprained, but I like hobbled for a week or more than that. And I'm like, my job is very labor intensive. Like people go, oh, you just sit in a boat all day. I jump up and down all day. We're working on that property. I never stop moving. I'm like, it is very labor intensive.
Yeah. And
I'm like, I can't do my job. Like, I broke my foot 3 years ago and I'm wearing a boot in the boat for 6 weeks. Like, it's a nightmare, So like, I just don't want to get hurt. So I got to where I will never, maybe one wake, but I'm never going inverted again.
We got a lot of grabs to play around with.
Yeah.
You can
I call it the scenic tour, dude. I go and I carve and I do wake jumps and 180s and grabs and, not saying I never fall, but I'm not going to try anything that I think there's potential of a hard fall on.
Yeah.
And I do still like it. A couple years ago when Parks came out with his new board, a lot of times they'll bring, because Lake Ronix is just 3 miles down the street, and I do work with Ronix and Radar. So a lot of times when they're doing a new board, they'll drop one off at my place. And so Parks actually came out, and he goes, hey, I just want to get some different people to ride it, because I'll have a pretty mixed bag, And so super cool. Parks went and rode it, and he's Parks. And then I had 2 or 3 people ride it, and I rode it, and then we kept it for a couple of days. And then when I rode, like, if I ride now, I'll go, that was fun. Like, that was fun. And then I rode 2 or 3 days in a row, just instead of skiing, like, no, I'm going to ride again today. And I went, when we had that board, I rode like 3 days in a row. And then the problem gets to where if I ride 3 days in a row, I want to do more.
Like more tricks. Bump it up a little bit.
But I don't want to do more.
Yeah.
So I just stop.
Hey. Go back and throw the ski back on.
Yeah.
So wakeboards, though, does size matter?
Yes. So I'm a size up guy. Murray and I preach that forever.
Like as a general rule of thumb?
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay. And here's my theory. People go, oh, it's going to weigh more. Oh, the swing weight. Oh, it's whatever. And I'll go, here's my question. If I was going to throw you 30 feet at 28 miles an hour, would you rather land on something bigger or smaller? To me, that's the only question you got to ask, right? But then other than that, it's just a bigger platform to stand on. It's more stable. It's less reactionary to what you do. So if you have a little bitty board and you're forward or you're back, that board's going to react more. You got this bigger board. It's just like the movements are slightly like lessened.
Dulled, whatever.
Yeah.
That's probably not a word. Dulled.
The word I was going to use, I was scared it was going to be inappropriate. So yeah, but I just feel like overall they're way more user friendly.
Yeah.
So like if anybody's on the cusp at all, I always go up.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more with that. So, I mean, speaking of that, I would say this question is, as someone who's taught and pulled countless riders, what are some key things people need to think about when buying their first wakeboard setup? And I think we just hit on one, which is size up.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, I would say number one, that I would not do something that is aggressive in any way, like an aggressive 3-stage or very wide or very narrow or whatever. I wouldn't do something that's, on the edge of the spectrum of what it is.
Yeah.
Occasionally I will say there's some boards that I'm like, that's just a bad board. But, I in general, like you see people ride whatever and they can do very well on it. I mean, I do think there's some common threads. I mean, I tend to be more a continuous guy.
Yeah.
Like, or blended, like that's the district has always been I use the district a ton at my place, which is like blended 3-stage and continuous. So like, I just don't want something like real abrupt. Like, I mean, like back in the day, that Parks board, dude, was like, and Parks was the man, and everybody that came rode that thing, and I was like, oh God, this thing is trash. Like, I hated it for students.
Yeah, think like a drainage ditch.
Yeah, you couldn't, Parks rode it insane, but like when Parks came out that day with that board, so that board's very different. It's like more back like to continuous. And what he said to me, he goes, well, back in the day, the wake was little. And he goes, so I just wanted something that punted me as hard as I could. And he goes, now the wake is giant. And like, especially like the X-Star, the transitions are beautiful, dude. Like they're just, and granted, everybody's got personal preference. Some people want it steeper or whatever, but they're just like these nice, long, smooth, beautiful transitions, takeoff and landing. And he goes, now I just want to be able to maintain my speed through the top of the wake. And that's the way I teach everything, is like by being able to maintain speed and direction. Because if you do that, you're going to be safe.
Love it. So, I mean, on water skis, I think the same, personally, you can agree or disagree. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Size matters as well on water skis.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think, can you say that applies pretty similarly in water skiing when you're getting ready or getting started?
I mean, definitely getting started, I would put you on something, just a little bigger, one size up. And then, once you get to more high end, like obviously you got some too big, it's harder to turn, or it's harder. Like, cause I've vacillated back and forth. I ride a 66, and I've ridden a 66 my whole life. And then, a while ago is when Brooks was still with me. This is a very Brooks Wilson move. We do a new vapor every 2 years. So, the new one is done basically a year before it's out, and it'll always just have the old graphics on it and whatever, because there's not a new graphic, right? So I show up to ski with Brooks one day and put on my ski, ride my ski, did very well, like skied as well as I could. And he goes, how you like that ski? I'm like, bro, I love this ski. I love it. He's like, it's not your ski. So he had the new one, same graphic as mine. He put the same stickers on it. He mounted my boots on it, whole thing. I just put the freaking thing on and didn't even remotely question it. And it was a 67. And so I rode a 67 for a couple years, and then I'm back to a 66 now. And my rationale on that is like 67 builds speed easier. So you have to work a little harder on the 66, but ultimately if I have a smaller ski, I'm more in control of my speed. Because if it builds speed easier, then you have to do something with it. And if I'm on some a little smaller and I have to maybe work a little harder at periods to get the speed I necessarily want, but it's also going to shut down for me quicker, and I'm going to be able to just kind of manage it better.
Yeah, that makes sense. So part of your setup as well is the boats you got out there. So you got 2 Mastercrafts, right?
Yep.
So how's that relationship currently? Because you probably put the most amount of hours on boats in a year. I mean, it's tough to.
I mean, there are other places. I mean, like
you're up there.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
definitely up there. I mean, there's guys like those gator bait dudes, I mean, they're just spinning circles in Miami all day long.
Yeah.
And like, there's this group of guys in Tahoe that run just, flat out, like it's for 3 months. But I mean,
Sun up to sundown.
they go hard,
Yeah.
for 3 months. I mean, there's other places. I mean, there's dudes in Wisconsin, and there's guys putting hours on boats everywhere, right? Sure. But I mean, we definitely do a lot. And so, I mean, currently I have a Pro Star and an X Star. My new X Star is getting delivered this week, and she's a beauty. Got the supercharger again. So pumped on it. And then my new Pro Star, because both my boats are 23s now. My new Pro Star is supposed to finish in like March or something. But yeah, I mean, I've been with Mastercraft since that Toyota shut down since 2001 till now. So it's a very long relationship. And it's amazing. I mean, they're as important to my success as anyone or anybody. Because they've really believed in me, and they've really supported me. And, like, to me, like, I mean, I was doing my contract negotiation a couple years ago, and I said, and I wholeheartedly believe this: Travis Moye, the boarding school, and Mastercraft, that's all one thing. And in my world, that's one thing. And, the only way I'm not going to be in a Mastercraft until I stop doing this is if something grossly goes wrong. I believe in the product. It was my family's first, but not my family's first ski boat. We had a Starcraft that I learned to ski behind, but my family's first boat was a Stars and Stripes, 1982, bud. And other than those 3 years with Toyota, I was either sponsored by one, had one, or skied at a school that was Mastercraft. And that's all I've ever wanted to do. I do genuinely believe in the product and think we make the best product. I love my boat. Not everybody makes nice boats, right? You get in, I mean, even some of the lower name, like whoever you would say are fourth or fifth now or whatever, you get in those boats and they're very nice boats, right? So a lot of it does come down to personal preference, but I know what I do in my boat every day and how hard we push it and what we're doing and how they look and are still performing when I give them back. And I do genuinely believe in my heart we make the best boat.
Okay, so kind of speaking of the hours you're putting on the boats and what you're putting them through, what's some of the feedback that you give? Because I'm sure you either have a notes app or something that you take notes. I'm sure you do.
I mean,
so what's the kind of feedback, I mean, that you've been given over the past X amount of years?
So I have validated every engine we've come out with since because we used to be with Enmar. We switched to Elmore in 2011 or something, 2010, 2011. So even before Elmore was the official engine supplier, I had an Elmore in my boat. I've validated every single engine we've come out with since then. And that's whether it's now it's, since 2012, I've had a ski boat as well. So, I mean, that's even like the ski boat engines got the first one in my boat, and we're, running them and seeing how they go and making changes and working directly with Elmore on that and Mastercraft engineers, obviously. A lot of times there's things on my boat. Almost every boat of mine has something that you wouldn't know was different, right? Like, I mean, whether it was a water pump or they're trying a different stitching pattern, or if it's a different hinge on, like there's something they're like, hey man, let's see how this goes. Right. And I'll just put a bunch of hours on it. I mean, I helped them, develop a new driver's seat, like whatever it is. And just because I do put a ton of hours on them, I care about it. I'll give good feedback, and I'm honest.
That's a big one. The last one right there.
So, I mean, because I had one year we were working on a boat, and it was a surf boat. I mean, I'll tell you right now what it was. It was an X23. We all went and rode it, and they're smart. Like most of the time we're doing stuff, they bring people out individually. They're not putting 6 guys in a boat. So, because once one person says one thing, everybody thinks that.
Yeah.
Oh, the left side of the wake is a little washy, or it's huge. Oh, it's whatever. Like, or the cruise is running on me. Like, whatever.
You lose the ability to form your own opinion.
So we do all that stuff separately, and they gave me this sheet. And they asked these questions, and literally the spot was like this to fill out like an answer. And then it got to the part about the wakeboard wake. And I'm like, you know, like just going, man, you know, and I know Palma did the same, and everybody else was like, oh yeah, it's fine, you know, like whatever. And, you know, that boat was designed to be a surf boat. It wasn't really designed to be a wakeboard boat, but I'm like, you know, if you're asking me about the wakeboard wake, I'm going to tell you about the wakeboard wake.
Yeah.
You know, and the guy, the engineer at the time, he's like, dude, you're killing me. And I'm like, you asked me. So I'm not going to lie.
That's what we're here for.
I'm not going to lie to you, dude. If you just want me to say it's fine, you want me to bring me something and say it's fine, just tell me that and I'll say it's fine. But you're asking me my opinion on something, I'm going to tell you my opinion on that. And I do feel like, you know, like they respect that and they'll take it, and they're glad that people have an opinion that really know what they're talking about and they're honest about it, you know? And I mean, we have a really good little team, like from that standpoint. I mean, Zane Schwank used to do so much of that, you know, and Zane was obviously an incredible, because Zane can do anything behind a boat, right? So he was great doing that. Palma does a lot of that now. He's like, you know, team management and dealer trainings and whatever, but he works directly with the engineering department, you know, and Palma is like so smart and so methodical and so talented, you know, that he's the right guy to have that. And he's also such a good go in between the riders and engineers, because you have to have somebody that can translate that, right? So it's like, you know, I mean, we were doing something recently and, you know, Tyler Hyam was leaving as I was pulling up, you know, and it's like once again, we're taking everybody individually and getting their opinions on things and whatever. And then Palma gets to help be the one to bring that to engineering and, you know, figure out the best way about it.
Interesting. So I got a couple more questions before we wrap up and then do some Patreon questions.
Yep.
So do you think rails should come back on the PWT?
I have mixed emotions about it. It is kind of cool, honestly. Like, the thing that sucks about it is most of those courses are very small, right? So you think about an OWC. You can barely turn the boat around in there and get going anyway, right? So it's very small and it can just be hectic. And that was the thing that I don't like about it, is that somebody would land something and they have to cut like an idiot, and then they do this super horrible hit, you know, or they just have to like speed hop the wake to get over or whatever. So I feel like a lot of times it would mess up the overall vibe of some runs, because it was just, oh crap, I got to get there.
A little chaotic, a little messy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when it's right, it's this beautiful little,
yeah.
Because Thomas, we've been talking about it. Thomas wants to do some rail stuff at the camp.
There we go, Thomas.
You know, he's talking about the road gap. He went out and measured it up and stuff the other day.
There we go, Thomas. Okay.
So he's been wanting to do some stuff. And like, you know, we're talking about like, you know, having rails and hit a rail and then cruise over and bam, like badass wake hit and just get it going. Cause it is super cool. And it shows your versatility, and, you know, and they're just different. And I mean, I do like it, but it was just hectic. And then, you know, a lot of people had no business hitting them, and it was dangerous, and people just wouldn't even know they were there and almost kill themselves. And I mean, I snapped on some riders before, you know, just like, what the hell were you thinking? Like, what were you thinking? And not, once again, I'm not thinking about it, oh, you're an idiot. I'm not saying I don't care what happens to you, but like, if you're willing to cut over there and you don't know what's going to happen and you freaking break your leg, then that's on you. But you go over there and do that, and you get, like, this one kid almost got stabbed in the chest by the up rail of the transfer box. Literally, I chopped the throttle, and I'm talking inches. Kid would have died, right? He'd have been very, very injured. That happens, there's no longer a pro wakeboard tour. There's not enough money coming into that tour or the insurance. I mean, I've been doing this long enough to where our insurance company that covered every camp dropped the entire sport of wakeboarding like 10 years ago. They're like, we're not touching you guys. And everybody was scrambling, like trying to figure out what they were going to do when their policy was up. Kid dies on the pro wakeboard tour. That's probably the end of the pro wakeboard tour. So that's where once again, my anger comes from. It's like, you're screwing up for everybody, dude.
Yeah.
Not you. You're screwing this up for everybody. You know, but it is, long answer, but it is cool when it's done right.
I think that's it right there.
Yeah.
Done right.
And like for a video section or something, because I actually talked to Gunther about it years ago. He was wanting to maybe come out and do something. And, I think, and, he built those rails on Clear Lake and, whatever. And I do think there's something there.
Yeah, totally agree. It adds a little flavor.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to hear Thomas Herman might be doing a little something.
Oh, yeah.
I'd be stoked for that. What rider was the most superstitious before events?
Andrew Atkinson.
What did he do?
So Andrew is amazing, dude. I love Andrew. So Andrew would not shake people's hands the day of an event because he didn't want to get sunscreen or something on his hands. He would not shake your hand.
That one's fair. I kind of get that one.
Okay, true. And then he didn't want anyone touching his handle or rope or anything, right? And then he had this thing, like he'd be on the dock and he would have like basically the end of the handle, the rope end, 5 foot away, and he would fling the handle in the water and pop it up to his hand, and he wanted it to land away, right? So he would sit there and do it till it was away, right? So I remember we were at Grand Rapids. I remember this perfectly. We're at Grand Rapids, dude. That's a cool little spot. Yeah, I don't know if you've been to that spot where they did contests.
Yeah, where they did the throwdown, right?
Yeah, that's a cool spot for a contest. I love that spot. And I love Grand Rapids, and I love action up there. Like, that, to me, that's like one of the best spots to have a contest, period. I love it. But so Andrew's sitting there putting on his boots, and the dock starter grabbed the handle, like just thought he was doing him a solid, like grabbed the handle and handed it to him. And Andrew's just like bent over messing. And we just see like the whole boat was just watching. We're like, oh God, and he's just like, like you could just see him. And people always ask me how he rode. I wish I knew.
I was going to ask, yeah,
but we just watched him just break down. I mean, it was just like this, the sacred handle had been touched.
Oh man, that's funny. I like that. Last Patreon question, then we kind of wrap it up. From Jeff Johnries. He wants to know about your back edge on the Hyperlight Rome in St. Cloud.
Okay, so it's actually John Jeffries.
Okay, so he's messing with me then because his name on Patreon is the backwards version.
Yeah,
and
he does.
And then I saw his Instagram handle, and it's the other way around. So then I'm like, well,
I've seen him do that on.
What do I
days.
do now? Because it's two first names right next to each other. So he got me.
It's John Jeffries.
He got me.
So he was a student of mine for a very long time. They actually moved onto those lakes where we had the boarding school originally from Melbourne, Florida, not Australia, but moved so he could train with us. Incredible rider. Kid's incredible. And now he works, he has his own little filming and editing company, but he also works with Black Oak, who does all of Mastercraft stuff. And he's, he does a ton of Mastercraft and all our, Aviara and all the other Mastercraft brands. Kid's great. So when the Rome first came out, I was so into it because one, there's no fins on it. So I'm like, there's only so much you're going to do on this, right? So this like fell into what I really wanted. Like, I'm not trying to kill myself. I'm not whatever. And you could just go butter around and do 180s and do crabs and do wake jumps. And nobody expected you to do anything else, right? And it was fun. So we were on these bigger chain of lakes, and Murray and I used to give each other whips where we'd turn the cruise off and most time have no weight in the boat. So the boat's just ripping. And we would give these whips and take them on the Rome and see how far we could go. Right? You can go far.
Just some good old fun right there.
Hundreds of feet. I mean, you're going far and you're going really, really fast. I mean, dangerously fast.
Yeah.
So I start going and I start spinning backside, and I'm just doing there's no fin, there's nothing to help you. And I'm just like swimming, trying to get just over my toes, and couldn't do it, and caught that back edge going like 60, dude. I don't even know. I stopped. The board was 25 feet from me. I felt like I got hit between the shoulder blades with a sledgehammer. One of the hardest falls I've ever taken. I mean, I've crashed jumping and bruised my heart and fractured my sternum and like woke up in an ambulance. I would say this fall borderline rivaled. I mean, it was brutal. like brutal. Oh, so bad.
Well, thanks, John. You got me on your name, but at least we got a good story out of it.
Yeah.
I think I want to talk about, wrapping it up before we get to some Patreon questions after the future. So what's kind of the future of the boarding school look like?
I mean, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing, man. We just want to make a place where our place is gorgeous. I mean, it's gorgeous. It's honestly like wakeboarding or water skiing in a park. I mean, it's beautiful, and there's all these huge oak trees. We're working on the property constantly. It's a very special place. It really is. I mean, I was talking with Brooks about this the other night. Like, eventually I'm not going to do this anymore. And I've already thought about like how sad I will be the last day I go there. It'll be devastating. It really will. I mean, the place is so special. And so, I mean, we're just trying to, like, with the property and with the house and everything, we're just trying to make it the most special place, right? To where I don't care if you just came there and sat, period. I mean, because we go out there with all our friends and family and whatever, and you could just hang out there. And I mean, where else? I mean, it's 83 acres, and just how many times do you get to be on that size of piece of property and these beautiful lakes and all the oak trees are trimmed and you're just in this beautiful space. I mean, so we're just trying to create a space that whether you even got on a wakeboard, water ski, surfer, foil, whatever, that you're happy being there. Because I do get so many families, I get so many couples, I get so many whatever, that a lot of times, like, the mom or sometimes the husband or sometimes whatever doesn't do, they're just a tag along, right? And I want it to be where even if you did that, you're just happy. You're like, man, this is a great spot. This is super.
Hey, when are we going back?
I'm super cool. Like, I want a vacation there.
Yeah.
Because like the thing I always say is not every single person learns exactly what they want to learn, right? That's a tall order to think, sometimes because it's unrealistic, and then sometimes because you just don't get there. Things take longer, different periods of your riding or skiing, you'll have these quick jumps, and then you're quick jump and you're set, whatever. But everybody can have the experience they want to have. And so, everybody that works with me, I tell them, I go, look, ultimately we're in customer service. We're in the hospitality industry. So if a chair is not pushed in, if there's something dirty, if there's towels, whatever, if you see somebody struggling in any manner, we're running a hotel, we're running a restaurant, we're running a sports complex, we're running a lot of things. We're running a psychiatrist office. I mean, like, honestly, people come there and I always call that the boat's like the trust tree, man, like Will Ferrell. Like, people get in there and they just feel comfortable with you, and they will talk to you about anything. I mean, that's some of the things people have told us. We're like, wow. But it's like, the same time, I'm like, man, the fact that they felt like they could talk to us about like that we're on that level, they trust in us that much, and they're that comfortable, and they let their guard down that much to be able to say something like that to us. I mean, we've had crazy things. Like, I had a kid, I was the first adult. He told me that he got his girlfriend pregnant, and he was going home to tell his parents, but I was the first adult he told.
Wow.
And I was taking this kid to the airport, and he's like, I got to tell somebody, and I was like, man, and I talked to him, right? And he had that kid, and see him on Instagram. He's great, so it's just like that. The relationships that we get to build there with people, like, that's the most important part of the whole thing.
Yeah. So keep on more of that.
Yeah.
And just making it better.
Better
experience.
It's always, I tell everybody when they leave, I go, next time you come, it's going to be better. And you could come next week. You can leave on Friday. Monday, it's going to be better because we're constantly working, bud.
Love it. Before we hit the Patreon questions, anybody you'd like to thank? Anything else you want to talk about?
Yes, I do. So both my parents are passed away, but like, obviously without them, my dad was the first one. I learned to ski a week later. We had a Stars and Stripes. My dad was just fanatical about it, and then my mom took me to the lake every day. She was the one. I mean, my dad was working. My mom took me to the lake every day, took me all around the world. The first person that ever saw something special in me and wanted to help me was this lady, Linda Giddens, who was in South Georgia. She was the best women's jumper at the time, world record holder, Masters champion, world champion. I lived there every summer from the time I was 10 till 16. And her and her husband, Leonard, I was their kid. She was one of the first. I let her know even before I bought the property. So I leased that property for 12 years or whatever. I bought it 2 years ago. I've never even told it. I don't tell anybody. But most everybody thought I owned it anyway, and it wasn't for me to say I have it. Like,
Yeah.
It was for me, like I told the lady I bought it from, I was like, I don't remember. I think I was young, but from the second I realized that having your own lake was a thing, that's all I ever wanted. It's the only thing I wanted in my life was, aside from my family, is my place. But Linda, like fully, man, she taught me so much and just loved me so much. And then she had this dude, Shay Langley, who happens to be Jeff Langley's dad, that, he ended up, so this is a crazy story. I'm sure we're probably way too long. I don't know.
No such thing.
Shay worked at Linda's ski school, was 3 hours away from where I lived, right? So I skied with him there during the summer. And that time, my parents bought a lake house. We're on the dock at our lake house on Lake Allatoona, sitting there. This is like first weekend. Shay comes pulling out, next door neighbor in a Stars and Stripes. He lived next door to me, and we didn't know it. So I started skiing with Shay every day. He was in high school. He was like 18, junior or senior in high school. So I skied every day after school with Shay for a couple years. And he taught me so much. He's a great coach, and he was insanely talented. Is insanely talented. I mean, he's like annoying to where, he like pole vaulted. He was like the punter. He ran track.
He's that guy.
He was one of the first guys in the world doing a flip on a trick ski. He'll juggle riding a unicycle. I mean, he's just like, okay, we get it, bud. So Shay, and then, I told you about Tom Strong. Obviously, Ferraro, I call Ferraro a couple times a year, and I tell him, without Ferraro, Chet Raley, there's no way I would have done all this. For the time that it was good with Darren, it was great. And once again, I would not have been able to make it to the next step. Obviously, Murray, that was, it was all incredible. Every guy that's ever worked with me, there's so many people. Everybody at Mastercraft, Arn Clow, who's the team manager forever, I think he's the last original person there from when I started in 2001. And Arn's the one that sent me a picture of my new boat yesterday and was like, hey, let's get this insurance lined up. Let's get this girl to you. And what we have with Mastercraft and the boarding school would not have happened. It was his idea. And he's amazing. Like, he always fights for the skier or the rider or the surfer, like whatever.
Love those guys.
He's one of, if not the best dude in the freaking industry. If you ask me, I love him, dude. Man, I know I'm forgetting some people. Brooks Wilson. Man, God, there's so many people, dude, that, I'm just a guy who liked to water ski. And look what I'm doing.
And all you've done too, yeah.
Like I said, what we do is I don't want this to sound dumb, but it's life-changing.
I don't think that sounds dumb at all.
We change people's lives.
Yeah.
We do. I know that. The guys I got there right now, man, this dude, Bob Marley, that I was telling you about, comedian, he started skiing 7 years ago. Started skiing with us, changed his life. He loves it. He loves it as much as anybody in the world. He thinks about it as much as anybody in the world. He loves it. It's so much fun. Always incredible having him there. But we changed that dude's life. And so many people, man. So it's cool. I feel so lucky to do what I do, and it's a grind, man. I got 83 acres and a house and 3 apartments and boats and employees and students. And we do it all with just 3 people. We got me and Thomas and this kid, Bo, right now. We do the whole situation, just 3 of us, dude. It's a lot. It's an insane amount of work. And you absolutely have to love it or it would eat you alive. And some days it still does. You know, but it's like, man, without that, and I know it left some out, but without that list of people, there's no way I could have done it or continue to still do it. I mean, you know, I made so many good buddies, Palma, Steve Carlton. Like, Steve Carlton's one of my very best friends. He's head designer at Nautique, but one of my best friends. And it's like, so many guys like that support me and love me. You know, like, it's just,
I mean, that says a lot about who you are.
it's good.
too.
It's good.
So, I mean, I think I got to say thank you, because I can't imagine how many people's lives you've touched through wakeboarding, water skiing, or any form of water sports over God knows how many years it's been now.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, wakeboarding wouldn't be where it's at right now, or water skiing or any of these sports, without you. And what you're doing at the boarding school is amazing. The place is amazing. People you got there is amazing. And I'm just glad it's a part of wakeboarding. I'm glad it's the best place to be. You're missing out. You're in the wrong place. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think wakeboarding thanks you. Water skiing, I don't know much about them, but I'm sure they thank you too.
Yeah.
Love it, man. Anything else you want to touch on, or?
Yes.
All right.
You hadn't asked me a question or two that you ask everyone. You always ask people what riders they're like.
Oh yeah. How does that on? Oh, it is on here, but it's in the afterwards. But we'll do it right now.
Okay.
What riders get you stoked right now?
Okay.
Is that what you're doing?
Yes. Because I thought about this a lot. Honestly, I was excited about this question. So, and I genuinely mean this. The riders that most inspire me are the guys that I ride with, right? And I think that's how it should be. Like, you should be, and regardless of level, you should be inspired by the guys you ride with. And if you're not, you need to find new people to ride or ski with, regardless of level. I'm dead serious about that. If you don't have somebody you're stoked on in the boat, you find somebody. And I know that's not always that easy, but you should. And I mean, I have Thomas, and Thomas would be on this list, like, even if he wasn't my guy. I mean, Thomas is kid is like, everything's so poppy. Every landing is so late. Every landing is so like crispy.
Crisp, yeah.
It's just like, dude, like, it makes a sound effect, you know? And then the kid's smiling the whole time. Like, how can you not love that? You know, he would be on my list no matter what. I mean, I do really think, you know, and then just obviously the triple was huge. I think I think he's great on social media, you know, just relatable and fun and light and what it should be about. And then Mary Morgan Howell rides with me every day. She's my first set of the day every day. Cause she goes to Rollins, and so she has her classes to go to. So like all this winter, dude, all of January, every day we started, it's been in the 40s with the exception of like 2. And that little girl would be there waiting on me. She does a 30-minute warm up and
Wake pants weather.
Oh, wake pants weather, bud. But like, she's
Getting after it.
She's getting after it, and like, she loves the process so much. She loves the process. And it's super cool to watch that she wants to figure it out and get to where she will do the most menial things to make something better, to where I feel like a lot of people at her level would not accept that. Like, whether it was an ego thing or whatever, they'd be like, oh, what? I got to jump the wake for 2 weeks? Yeah, you got to jump the wake for 2 weeks. And she's like, yeah, let's jump this wake for 2 weeks. We're going to figure this out. You know, and then too, she's the sweetest little girl in the world, man. I love her like she's my own, man. She's great. And then I have these 2 kids. So Bo Atchison, that's working with me right now. He's an Illinois kid, came down and helped me last winter. And man, everything is so big and poppy. It's crazy. It's crazy. Like, he gets more pop than 90% of pro men. If you said you go do a hill 3 and you could put a top 10 rider, his hill 3 is going to be bigger, wake to wake, period. And it's just because he came down and he was like really good, but had not been instructed. And like he gave into the process, you know, like of starting. I'm like, hey, we got to fix your wake jump, you know. And he's like close to land. But the first week he rode with me, he got staples and a concussion because he tried to double and put his knee into his chin, and then I forget what the concussion came from. But I was like, Bo, hey, like we got to reel it in. But he was just like he's like first time like there's a boat like an X-Star and I'm helping him and whatever. And I go, hey, we got to slow it down. And then he just got incredible, and it's just so fun to watch. And then I have this other kid, Carrick Zimmerman, man. Like Carrick, he's helped me like the past 3 or 4 years. He actually moved down. He's the one that's getting married at the camp.
Okay.
He came down like COVID year, helped me, and he was like so in his arms. And we didn't get into this like with the coaching thing. Like you can't be in your arms, period. You got to be in your shoulders. He was so in his arms, and it was horrible. And he would take these like everything was great, or he would get killed. And so we fixed it, and then he went home for 9 months, and he came back, and it was the same as it was before. And I go, hey, because he was staying with me 3 or 4 months. I go, hey, we're fixing this time. And me and Scott, we made him only jump the wake for 2 weeks. Not a grab, not a 180, not a flip, not a nothing. Heel side, toe side, switch. I don't doubt we did switch toe side, honestly. Only jumped the wake for 2 weeks. The kid's insane. Like, and then two, what I love about him, he's young, man. He's like 23. He's got this old school thrasher. He'll fall once a set because he like thrashed the wake too hard.
Love that.
You know, and you're just like, get it, bud, you know? And then outside of my crew, you know, I'm going to say the same thing as everybody else. I mean, Sam Brown, super cool. I love watching Ty. I love watching Mossy. I mean, I went out to their place last year before Double or Nothing just to get in that boat and drive double ups and whatever. And I mean, Tyler was riding, and dude, Twelker was there that day, and he's just riding in the boat. And I'm like, and he goes, oh yeah. Like, and when Twelker's giving you the nod, like that's, and then granted they rode together and he loves that kid and whatever, but like, you know, there's not many people more proper than Twelker.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, and we were just sitting there looking at each other just like, damn, you know. And then, like, honestly, freaking Jamie Lapina, dude. That chick's a badass, you know, and she's trying so, like, she's pushing hard, right?
She is pushing it, yeah.
She's pushing hard, like, at wake and rails and whatever. And, like, I mean, her in the Double or Nothing was insane. Like, so, I mean, that wake was ridiculous. Like, you couldn't have paid me to hit that thing. And she's trying doubles off of it, and it's just so super cool.
She's got a double. That's in the
100%.
It's in there.
And not only is she going to do it, she's going to keep doing it. Because there's that one chick that did a double like 3 years ago.
Huge, yeah. Haven't seen another one.
I'd be curious if she's ever tried another one.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I haven't seen another one, so.
But
yeah.
Jamie's going to learn that double, and that's going to be in her pass.
It's going to be sick when
It's
that
going to
day
be
comes.
sick, dude. You know, and two, she's always smiling, dude. She's always like having fun and smiling. Like, we did a Roenick shootout, just me and my little girl, out at Clear Lake with like her and Jake and stuff. And, you know, she doesn't, I hung out with her once at Radar. Like, I don't really know her. I mean, I still don't really know her. But like we went out there and she was like so cool and like sweet with Lennon, man. It was like, you know, and Lennon my little girl loves wakeboarding more than anything, just loves it, you know, like, and so it's a girl like that, paying attention to her and being sweet and whatever, like,
huge,
you know, as a parent, there's like nothing better, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great list.
Yeah.
Off there. I don't disagree with anybody on that.
Yeah.
That's sick. All right. Well, I think we'll dive into some Patreon questions, but we'll wrap it up here first. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for coming on, Travis.
Yeah.
Love it.
So much fun, man.
This is a lot of fun. I'm sure we can keep going for a while, but thanks everyone for tuning in. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, join the Patreon if you're interested in supporting the podcast. It means a lot. Thanks for tuning in. See you guys next time.
Right on.